Rising steps up and throws to the end zone, and Dixon is in. Touchdown.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Here's Gordon again. Jump cut in the hole. Bust it to the outside. And Gordon diving for the end zone. Touchdown, Oklahoma State.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Now the throw across the middle. That was caught. And on a broken tackle, J.P. Richardson. Touchdown.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
And here's Green. He's going to keep it. And Green breaks loose. Garrett Green across midfield and forced out of bounds at about the 25 by D. Winters.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Lance Leipold's group with a 14-zip lead on Matt Campbell's Iowa State team. And Jalen Nolan is out to the races. Down the sideline. Noel tripped up inside the 5.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
R.J. Harvey, direct snap. He keeps it. And now UCF has a touchdown to start the ball game.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. As we are another day closer to the opening weekend of the college football season, just those handful of games that start Saturday morning in Dublin, Ireland. We'll have a guest today, Kelly Quinlan from Yahoo and Rivals, who covers the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, but also college football. He is in Dublin, Ohio. He will join us in the later part of this hour. How we doing, Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina? Everything good?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Craig, you just turned 40. There is nothing yet that affects you from your age mentally, is there?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Garrett, would you please, if you can, this is a picture of Paul Catalina sitting at the set tonight or this afternoon, and he is wearing flip-flops. We at it?
Learning the new system. Hang on.
Okay. Wearing flip-flops. We bring this up. Okay. There we are. Why? This is a new look here, huh? Kind of a comfortable. Look, you're in Florida, California, Hawaii.
This is a look I call the Garrett Ross. This is something he does every single day. Not every day. He's wearing tennis shoes today. So last night, we had a thing. It's a long story. We got no sleep. I'm on no sleep at all. And as I was walking out of the house today, we are a shoes-off house. And so my shoes live in the garage. Mm-hmm. So these slides and my sneakers live in the garage. So as I went to put on shoes, I just put the slides on and got in the car, and I was turning at the light on Martin Luther King, and I said, my feet feel different. And I looked down, and I'm 3 minutes from the office, and I'm wearing flip-flops. So,
all right, because you got no sleep. I have now 3 times, including just before the show, went to put my right contact in. All day long, it didn't seem right. And when I took out the one contact, 2 of them came out at the same time. Because I have done this many times where I put one contact in, forget about taking it out, then try to put another one in, and then I'm like, I can't see very well. So age has affected 2/3 of who we are on this set today.
That's where you're headed, Craig.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Lord willing, I get to that point. I didn't think I'd be even at, where I am now. So, if I'm there, then I guess that's a good thing. But don't have those issues right now. I know that my contact's in or not, or I know that I'm wearing things on my feet. But yeah, I guess I'm not that far away from all of that. So yeah, we'll see how that goes.
It's really bad if you have 2 pair of socks on or 2 shoes that are different.
Yeah.
So here's a list of the power conferences. This is not anything earth-shattering, but just to kind of put things in perspective, here are the teams that have won the power conferences over just the last 3 years. A list that has Michigan, Alabama, and now Utah. These are Pac-12 titles for them that have won more than one. Then there's a long list including Baylor, K-State, and Texas, who won it in the Big 12 last year. And it kind of it's just 3 years. But when I saw the list, I'm thinking, where's Oklahoma? Where's Ohio State? But it doesn't mean that they're in any kind of a drought. For them it is. But it's just a list of those who have won a power conference championship, a conference championship, since the last 3 years. And like TCU's not on there because, remember, they lost to Kansas State that play at the goal line with Duggan. But just to kind of start off the show, who among them? Michigan's not favored to win the Big Ten. Alabama's not favored to win the SEC. Utah, among all of them, has right now more momentum about winning what would be a third in the last 4 years, and then Florida State, Georgia in that mix, Texas too.
I would say Utah, Florida State, Georgia, and Kansas State and Texas on this list would be tops in their leagues as far as predictions go. For who will win the league. Washington's not going to be on the top of anybody's list. I think anybody in the world knows anything about Pitt, including Pitt, right now. They've got to see it. From their team. So, yeah, I mean, Clemson is picked second in the ACC, but I see more people picking Miami to win over Florida State than I see picking Clemson right now.
Yeah, I love Brett. Just 3 years, those just random, tomorrow's going to be 4 years. I don't know, but it just seems kind of random. But for the sake of, the conversation here, your question was who's not going to be on this list? Is that what you said?
Yeah, no, who among them, well, 2 ways, who among them that is listed has a chance to win another one that's a part of this list for the last 3 years. Just kind of a random list, but I would like Utah, Florida State, and perhaps Georgia / Texas are the ones favored to win their conferences this year.
Yeah, I don't expect Michigan to make it 4 in a row. There's still a good football team there just because they lost a lot and lost their coach. I know there's a lot of faith in Sharon Moore, but I wouldn't bank on them, especially with the new additions and making that 4 straight. Alabama, I think they're going to be pretty good, but I don't know that I'd have them winning the SEC per se. I think, so, I mean, as far as the teams that I think could repeat this, I think Utah is a sound choice to do so. I think Georgia, obviously, is a fair bet to win. Kansas State would be good money to go and jump on right now as well. I'm not buying Texas winning the SEC at the moment. I'm not ready to go there. I think they're going to be very good, but I'm not buying that. So, yeah, I'd say K-State, Georgia, Utah all look like they could definitely repeat. Clemson or Florida State, I think, similar boat. So, yeah. And then the rest of them, I don't have as much faith in.
All right. Now, this is a note. We don't have a graphic or anything, but this is an email that I received from Bobby, our good friend Bobby Thornton in Myrtle Beach. He watches us all the time. He's a huge West Virginia fan. Remember the edge, the chip on the shoulder that Neil Brown had last summer at Big 12 Media Days? Well, he has another chip. ESPN had come out with the top 100 players of the year, players for this year, and Neil Brown was upset about it, and basically questioned the ESPN writer who did not include anyone from West Virginia. And he said it's like they didn't even get to the W's when it comes to the alphabet of checking on teams. Now, he was basically referring to, I think, Garrett Green. If you did a top 100, and Green has gotten a little bit more attention, but if you did a top 100, do you think, honestly, that Garrett Green would be in your top 100 to start the year? We're talking everybody. Every guards, defensive tackles, cornerbacks.
I mean, he would be about my 12th or 13th quarterback max, I think. Maybe even a little bit lower. I mean, he's a top 20 quarterback in the country. I'm confident in saying that, in my opinion. But, when you start talking about, who are the of 100, there might be 14 left tackles on there that are all really good this year. And this is actually a really, really good year for running backs. Across the Big 12 alone should show you that. But really good year for running backs. So I don't know if he'd be in my top 100. That would be tough. I mean, he wouldn't be too far out of it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I admire Neil Brown sticking up for his team and his players. I think, that's what you want your head coach to do. This was on the Marty and McGee podcast.
ESPN, the SEC network.
The SEC, same thing, ESPN. And so, that was interesting to see him come out once again and kind of have to defend the program because he's just had to do that so often, it seems like, over the last couple of years. I understand where he's coming from. I mean, Garrett Green's a really good player. I do think he's a bit undervalued, but I think you're kind of splitting hairs when you're talking about top 100 because, whose list are we talking about? Are we talking about somebody that's really going to, recognize offensive linemen in there and other positions that aren't the skill spots? Are we talking about, the top 100 list that it's mostly, skill guys because that's what everybody recognizes and can better determine? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I know he's not trying to look that deep into it. Just on the surface, I think it's probably pretty close. I think if you looked at the Big 12 alone, is he a top 5 quarterback?
Within the conference?
Within the Big 12.
Well, that's what I mean. Within the conference, I would say he would be
He's borderline top 5. I'm sure somebody's like, no, absolutely. He's number 3 or something like that. But, I think there's a conversation there alone. So if you spread that out, and I think it's fair to say there's probably 15 other quarterbacks at least, adding all the positions. Yeah, I think you're probably cutting it close. I don't think it's super disrespectful, but I understand what Neil Brown's doing. And let's face it, man, these coaches are doing anything they can and everything they can to motivate their players. So, the disrespect gets put under a different type of microscope. I'm sure he saw that, and probably part of him really didn't care that much, and part of him was excited that he can now complain about this and use it to fuel Garrett Green and the rest of this football team. So I think that's part of the reaction here, but I also think it is just a constant situation of West Virginia as a whole just sort of is there for a lot of people, and that goes for the Big 12, that goes for nationally. And so, I think they're probably a bit fed up because they were a good football team last year, and he's a really good player. But, top 100, I don't know. You'd have to sit down and really make a list, but I do understand his angle here completely. And Garrett Green, I do think, is going to surprise some people this season.
I look forward to seeing what he does. He's just a gritty dude. And when I say that, then it a guy plays hard. No, he plays hard, he's gritty, but he's also fun to watch and a hell of a player. Pat McAfee saying, and I'm not going to use all of his words here, he's a West Virginia alum, of course. I'll tell you what, if you're in the Big 12, it's time to start blanking your pants. This is a new blanking Neil Brown. We're about to blanking run the Big 12.
Well, that's very McAfee. And look, I don't think that they're one of the teams that you would not have to, outside of the top 3 favorites, I can buy them winning it just as easy as I can buy most anybody outside of Kansas State, Utah, maybe Kansas, because it's going to be so weird in their schedule. And I think if they do win that game against Penn State, that chip on their shoulder is going to get really big, and they're really going to start have some confidence and momentum that they haven't had before, and they can charge through. But again, we'll see. They've got to do it 2 years in a row. And if this works for Neil Brown and his guys, then it works. So more power to them.
Yeah, I think part of the reason, at least myself, is not putting them in the Big 12 championship game is their schedule. I just think that they have one of the tougher schedules out there. It's not disrespect to West Virginia. It's not disrespect to Garrett Green. It's that I just think they have a tougher schedule than Kansas, than Kansas State, than Utah, teams that you could say are arguably already better than them on paper. And that's an opinion, of course, but they also have much easier schedules in some cases. So that's not a disrespect thing. That's just like I'm being smart with what I'm looking at here and trying to pick the best odds of who's probably going to get here. But there's plenty of room for that reason for, West Virginia to once again feel disrespected. I do think, though, guys, like, hasn't he set them up where they better, like, go win this year?
Oh, no.
Because, like, the whole, like, complaining about not getting respect, and last year you proved people wrong, and granted, you did. You proved people wrong, but, like, there comes a point now where you're complaining again, and, okay, like, if you go out there and you do it again, then, people need to just give you that respect, and that needs to be, a starting point that's just there out of respect for what they've done on the field for a couple of years. But I also think Neil Brown's got to be careful of, like, you don't want to be the guy that's complaining all the time. You know what I mean? Even though I'm sure a lot of it is like what we mentioned with this top 100 list. It's just fuel for his players and for his team. You're disrespected. Nobody believes in you. They all think you suck. They picked you last in the Big 12 last year. They picked you middle of the pack this year. No one I think that's a lot of this. I also think there is a genuine, like I said earlier, an overlooking of West Virginia, just in general, from the conference level to the national level, that they're sick and tired of. And so, you know what? Like, any problem that we have when we're talking about conferences or whatever it is, go out there and win. They did that last year. They go out there and do it again. Then I think he's going to have enough skins on the wall that people are going to maybe adjust their opinion on West Virginia. But if you don't go out and win, then it's going to just fall on deaf ears. So
that's a move called the Kirby.
Yes.
We call it the Kirby.
Oh, Kirby Smart.
Yes.
Like, nobody believed in us against TCU, and they beat them 65-7. Nobody believed in you. What?
That was completely bupkis.
They were playing the Transformers.
Yeah.
Neil Brown has a legitimate reason. Like, they had the wrong colors at Big 12 Media Day on one of the backdrops. They didn't have – what was the other thing?
Picked last in the conference.
They picked him last in the conference. So, I mean, he's got actual reasons as opposed to Kirby Smart, which was very clearly 100% just manufacturing drama and an arch enemy to fuel his troops. But there's a little bit of both going on with Neil Brown, and that's one of the teams that, like Paul said a minute ago, I think they could be in the Big 12 championship game at the end of the year. I do. If things fall the right way for them, I think Garrett Green's good enough to lead them there. I think they got enough around him to be able to be in the mix. But it's such an unknown wild card of a conference that, not much is going to surprise me, I don't think, at the end of the year, outside of like a Houston BYU championship game or something. I think everybody else has got such an opportunity as well that, it's hard not to disrespect somebody because there's like 12 teams that could play for a title,
I think that there are, and I would probably bet, I'm not a gambler by any means, but I would say that if you listed like that upper 6 to 8 teams in the Big 12, that one of them would make the Big 12 championship game on the bottom part of that upper 6 or 8. I wouldn't blink on that. I think that could happen because we've seen it happen even when they had Texas and Oklahoma in the conference. Okay, the Dylan Raiola, this is one of those like Jalen Daniels was named the starting quarterback at Kansas, basically because he's cleared healthy, everything's good. And Dylan Raiola, the 5-star freshman quarterback at Nebraska, has been named the starter for their game against UTEP. As a Nebraska fan, I know that he had to earn the job. You just don't walk in. That doesn't mean he's going to be their savior. But I really never thought there was much of a competition, with all due respect to others who are on the roster. And so, is he the savior? I'll see it when I believe it, but he's a hell of a player. He gets the start against UTEP.
So I saw a lot of people yesterday saying he's wearing 15 like Patrick Mahomes.
No.
But at Nebraska.
No, that's Tommy Frazier.
That's Tommy Frazier. So let's remember, they don't retire numbers, obviously.
I don't know what they do. I really don't know their history of what they do. I'm sure they have some sort of a Hall of Fame like a lot of people do, but I don't know about the – no, you're right, because Tommy Frazier's or 20 Johnny Rogers or whoever.
If you told me a number – that they would like, if you pick one number in the history of Nebraska that I personally, and this is obviously my generation, that you would say that no one would ever wear again, I would say 15.
Yeah. And you wonder, I don't know what he wore in high school. Haven't followed him that much, but Dylan Raiola, the start against UTEP, which is not this weekend, but next. The Earl.
That's exciting for Nebraska fans. I mean, he's the savior, so to speak, and a lot of hype surrounding that young man. So don't think, there was really much of a competition when all was said and done. I think this was sort of the foregone conclusion that most people came to the moment he arrived in Lincoln, honestly. And so here he is, and we'll see if he's as advertised pretty quickly. But, it obviously is not going to be a situation where he's a finished product by the end of this year, but it's going to be very exciting to see him debut for Big Red, and very interesting to see where that all lands by the end of the year and where Nebraska is after year 2 of Matt Rule. It's a very important year for them. I mean, he's not on a hot seat by any means, but I do think you just want to see how they build off of a year ago and, sort of where they fall in this new Big Ten. But, that definitely adds an element of excitement that was kind of already percolating, but is now very much out there for Nebraska fans. So that's cool for them.
The Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award watch list was released today. 90-plus players' names are on this list, and I sent Garrett a nearly impossible task. There is the list of all of the players within the Big 12. We're going to also have a notables list to kind of give you an idea, but there are the names. Go down, there's the former Baylor tight end, now Drake Dabney at TCU. There's everybody on the list, everyone but Josh Kelly, and also DeQuan Finn played high school football in the state of Texas, or you have to be a part of a Division I school inside the state of Texas. So, Craig, they kind of went through this, right? That they were trying to maybe tweak the eligibility of who could be a nominee, and they were trying to make it even more Texas based on either you were from Texas or you played at a Texas school. This was you played high school football in Texas, correct?
Yeah, I think it's been 10 years of the award, and it's just trying to make it a situation where there's more clarity for people to understand, because previously there was this whole line for the award about like you played your high school football in Texas, or you played JUCO in Texas, or you played your college. It was kind of wordy to just be blunt about it, and I think a little confusing. So this is very clear cut. You graduated from high school in Texas, or you're playing at a Texas school. Is that pretty clear? Mm-hmm. So everybody on this list, as you mentioned, played high school football in Texas. They're from Texas. They're eligible for the award. That goes for anybody at any school in Division I in America. So on offense. So if you're an offensive player, O-lineman or quarterback, and you went to South Lake Carroll or you went to Mahia, then you're eligible for this award if you played a D1 school. Or the only other qualification is you play currently in Texas. So that's why DeQuan Finn's on there, because he plays at Baylor, and Max Duggan was eligible for it when he played at TCU, or Bijan when he was at Texas. Those guys would all be eligible. So yeah, you either played at Texas University or you played Texas high school football and graduated, and that's it. That's pretty clear cut. And so that's what this list is the nominations from those schools who put forth a nomination. And you mentioned it's like 90 people. Well, there's a lot of Texas talent out there, and I think that's evident every year when this award rolls around, and is evident at the end of the year as well with the finalists that are always a very strong group, and usually like 1 or 2 or 3/4 of the Heisman on certain years, depending on what year we're talking about. So, yeah, you went to high school in Texas, or you play college ball in Texas. It's that simple. Some guys do both. That's what Earl did, and so that's kind of the emphasis of it. So, yeah, it's a Texas-based award.
All right, here are the notable names. Now, you saw, like, Taj Brooks, obviously, on there. We don't know exactly what kind of a year you might get from Finn, but there's Ollie Gordon. There's some names, Shedeur Sanders, names that could have monster years statistically. And then look at the notables, including a lot of these are quarterbacks, including some, again, there's Drones and Zeno on that list, former Baylor quarterbacks. Milroe, Damian Martinez, there's Quinn Ewers. These are players who are on the list as far as the watch list. Some can come and go. I thought it was cool that Alex Orji, the Michigan quarterback out of Saxe, there's Preston Stone, Cam Ward, Wigman, quarterback at A&M, and also Zeno at the end. So those are the notables that are not a part of the Big 12, but wanted to make sure we included their names. 90-plus names, at least for now, to start the watch list for the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award.
I'm trying to think if California, Florida, and Ohio had this same kind of award, like who would be the born in Texas, played high school football, or born and stayed there, like who would have the same kind of Earl credentials. And I've been thinking about it for like the last 5 minutes, just trying to invent one from Florida. And maybe Deion or Emmitt Smith, I think, would be like the award.
Deion from Escambia, right?
Deion's from North Fort Myers.
I'm talking about Emmett.
Emmett,
sorry.
from Escambia High School.
Yeah.
Emmett, like that would be it. But it's even hard to okay, like those two make sense, right?
I bet Ohio has 8 to 10 names.
Ohio, California would be.
I mean, they'd have plenty.
Yeah, plenty. I'm trying to think.
Like
Marcus,
John Elway or
Marcus
whatever.
Allen.
They'd have plenty. I mean, the thing, the reason to kind of tighten it up was the JUCO thing. It just didn't factor in enough to, and it's too hard to track.
Yeah.
Like most JUCOs don't even keep their website updated. You know what I mean? Much less trying to figure out where they came from and the transfer portal. And so like that part of it got eliminated because it needed to be clarified a little bit. And the born-in was a debate. The whole thing, though, is like if you were born here, but you didn't go to high school here and you didn't play Texas, like how Texas, you know what I mean? Like, were you a military? So it just gets too into the weeds. So just to clear it up, it's like, hey, you played high school ball here, you played college ball here. Boom, boom. Maybe you did both. That's pretty clear. And that's a hell of a list. I mean, that's definitely about 20 names there that you could all see being conference players of the year. And there's probably 10 to 15 of those names that you could see being in New York for the Heisman, or maybe not 15, but I mean, you look at that list. There's about 10 guys you could see in Heisman territory at the end of the year.
I said that this might be the best list of finalists that they have, and they've had some really good ones. But this could be like the mother lode when you get down to the end. Hopefully everybody has a big year, everyone stays healthy, and at the end you could have yourself some dudes now, alphas, on that list at the banquet at the start of the year. All right, so there we are with that. By the way, we have Brett McMurphy today. I haven't brought that up. We also have Dan Lyons, who writes for Athlon's Magazine. Also today, Chris Houston. He runs the Heisman Pundit, and he is a podcast every week with the Heisman Trophy. He did one, in fact, launched one, put it out there today with Pat Forty, looking at the Heisman Trophy and the possibility of looking at maybe how they might tweak it or change it or just talking about the history of it. Kelly Quinlan, as I mentioned, joins us from Dublin, Ireland. And J.J. Joe, Baylor radio and former quarterback, will join us today in the 5 o'clock hour. All right, so we got that. There is, what else do we have, Garrett?
The Big 12 Senior Bowl.
All right, now, the Senior Bowl released their watch list. This is, again, everyone's been doing that for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And this is how the teams, look at the list of the teams. Utah, Arizona, Colorado, UCF, Arizona State, and then also Kansas, all with double digit. Now, you might have somebody with 6 now that eventually might have 12 because, again, this is fluid. Jim Nagy runs this, the Reese's Senior Bowl, but the Big 12, those are the names or the numbers next to each school that have candidates, at least for now, to play in what is a very highly rated and a huge week in Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama, when the NFL coaches are hands-on and right there with them.
Yeah, I don't think it's a surprise that the teams that have the most watch people for the Senior Bowl are the ones who either have the most transfers in Colorado, the guys trying to make their last big pull, or Utah, UCF, Arizona, Arizona State, but like Arizona has a ton of transfers. Some of those guys up towards the top of the list. A little surprised that Kansas State only has 6, but if you think about it, it's a pretty darn young team right now that he's got.
The Pac-12 newcomers are certainly providing a lot of potential NFL ammo. I think that's an area that you start to wonder about what that looks like moving forward with all the consolidation, and you see those trackers like with every other event now in college football, from TV ratings to like NIL money or whatever. Like everything's a contest now or a graphic, and I think that's no different than when you get around to the NFL draft, right? And you see the players by conference and all that. And I think the Big 12 has been woefully underrepresented, and that's their own fault. Like that's nobody's fault but their own when it comes to the NFL draft. I think this past year was a little bit better, but some of that was Texas not being all that loaded at times. And this past year they had a huge class, but it just wasn't consistent. Oklahoma was pretty consistent year in and year out with a handful of guys, if not a couple handful of guys. But overall, I think the conference, has been towards the rear of, producing NFL talents. Although the biggest NFL talent in the world right now is from Texas Tech. But this is a year where I think maybe you could see that number bump up a little bit, and certainly that could occur as a result of the new teams you've brought in. Looking at those numbers from the former Pac schools there, that's a lot of potential Senior Bowl guys, 30-plus alone just from 3 programs. So if that pans out, and that's a big if, then, yeah, maybe you're starting to get a little bit more NFL draft attention, which would always be a good thing.
All right, Colorado, of course, there's a lot of debate about who they are, what they will end up doing. There are some national analysts that feel like they could play for the Big 12 title. This is from BetMGM. A bettor put down $10,000 on Colorado to win the Big 12 title. It's plus 2,500 right now. If he wins or she wins, would equal $250,000. Will they collect any money?
No.
Well, that wasn't very nice.
No, I'm just like, this is not a team that's ready to compete for the conference title. They need to be ready to compete to get in a bowl game and have a winning record.
What's it like to have that kind of money where you could just blow it if they don't win, if they don't make it? You just have that kind of money to bet.
Well, I would imagine people that do that also have those where they've bet 20,000 and they don't win that, and so it's just the cycle. So yeah, I think there's those moments where you're like, that'd be really fun when you hear about the winning, and then there's like the other 300 days of the year where you're like, it's probably not as fun. I don't know. That's not every tale of every gambler, but that is the tale of some, to be sure. So in this person's case, I don't know, but it seems like a smart bet if you got the money. 10 for 250,000. I mean, if you got 10,000 to just throw away. This seems like a safe bet to do that because I don't think Colorado's like that far off, honestly. They got arguably the best quarterback in the league. That's an argument that can be had, and you can come on the other side of that and have a very stern and clear and concise argument for Shedeur being the best quarterback in the league. I think they've got some good weapons around him. It's not just him and Travis Hunter. They really did load up on D-line. I was watching an interview with Warren Sapp, I don't know if he's the only GA in America that does interviews, but he was basically the D-line coach the way the interview was going. And he seems very fired up about the guys that are there in that room. Now, on the other side of the line, is the offensive line any better? That's the big question. Just like it is with Baylor and just like it is with plenty of other teams out there, just like other teams have quarterback questions or whatnot. We need to see that O-line, but if that O-line's better, I'm not saying they're going to be in the Big 12 title game, but because there's not this round-robin schedule, if things fall the right way, I don't think it's impossible. And if you've got 10,000 to burn, then I don't know. It seems like as fair of a bet as any to make because I don't think it's completely out of the question.
When I used to go and back when I lived in East Texas, we would go to Shreveport with the Louisiana Downs, and there would always be like a media day where they'd have all the spread with all the food, and they would wine and dine us and stuff, and we would do interviews, and then occasionally go there just to go there. I would always, whether I had much money or not, I would always put, even if it was the minimum bet, on the long shot in every race, whether it was $1 or not, $10 or $5, because if you hit it one time, during the time you're there for one day, you're going to make some money. One time. Now, you could also every time be wrong, but it was worth to me the risk to put down money on the 50 or 100 to 1 shot.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. It's also like playing slots, right? Yeah, the little for the hopefully the most. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And I'm certainly not a gambling guy. I do think it's a long shot, and that's why you'd get $250,000 for $10,000. Because I think particularly, the thing with Colorado is not disrespect to Dion. It's questions about the line and questions about the defense. And I also think it's very fair to look at their schedule and go, damn, like that second half in particular is pretty brutal. Like they play pretty much every ranked team in the Big 12 in like the last 5 or 6 games of the season. I mean, K-State and Utah and Arizona. Right. And now all those teams aren't going to necessarily be in those spots when that time rolls around. But on paper, I think that's one of the big, like, I don't know about Colorado because of the questions you have personnel-wise, but then also like who they're going to, like the way the schedule sits. But yeah, I mean, that seems like a worthy bet.
They have, and look, TV's going to love this because they'll have Shedeur at, and this is a non-conference game, but Shedeur at Dylan Raiola, who's, the highly touted player. They'll have Shedeur against DeQuan Finn, Shedeur against KJ Jefferson, Shedeur against Avery Johnson, Noah Fafita, Cam Rising, Jalen Daniels, and Dr. Alan Bowman.
Yeah.
So they have
Professor
Alan Bowman. So they have a really tough schedule. Their two easiest Big 12 games are Baylor and Cincinnati, and then the middle of the road Big 12 games are UCF and Tech, both teams that, if things turn their way, could
Where are those
win
games
8-9.
at?
What?
Where are they at?
They're at UCF and they're at Tech.
Okay, well, we know UCF can be not that they haven't played in front of some pretty harsh crowds or whatever, but as far as that's you were rattling off a bunch of quarterbacks that they will play. That means those teams are going to play Shedeur.
They play Shedeur, but these are good matchups. So they're him being the best quarterback is not necessarily the trump card that they needed to be given the schedule that they have, because he's not playing anybody who's so far beneath them most of those games that, it's not like, and they almost lost to Stanford, but when they were playing Stanford last year, there's a gap between him and the Stanford quarterback. Here in this, that when you do the, what's better is almost a push in a lot of these games, because there's really good quarterbacks in the Big 12, and he might be the best one, but I don't think, Avery Johnson or Cam Rising or any of those guys are all that far behind either. And those teams might be better off developed in other spots than Colorado is. That's why I say, I think they could very easily go 6-6 or 7-5 this year, and it wouldn't shock me. But if they're 10-2, 9-3 and contending for the conference title,
and Cowboys will hire Dion.
Shedeur's probably the number one overall pick if that's the case.
Yeah. And who knows where he's going to be
Heisman
picked.
Trophy winner.
He's probably maybe the Heisman Trophy winner.
I agree. All right, when we come back, Kelly Quinlan is in Dublin, Ireland, where they started working out today. The game coming up on Saturday morning, Florida State, Georgia Tech. He covers the Yellow Jackets. We'll get into that with him. Also, again, a lot of guests today from start to finish. We appreciate your time. If you haven't already, please click the like and subscribe button. If you have subscribed, then please pass the word on to somebody else of what we do every day. This is 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, lowt.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. Here's how you can find out if you have a testosterone issue when it comes to your levels of drop as you get older, in your 40s, especially as you get into the mid to upper 40s and even 50s. Your body changes. You might have more body fat even though you exercise and your diet's good. You might have low testosterone that leads to the fact that your sex drive is not the same, and it affects you there. It could be your focus, a lot of that, energy. And so Dr. Petty will set you up. If you contact him at pettycliniclowt.com, contact him. They'll set you up to get your blood work. They will take care of that, get the results, and if your testosterone level is too low, he can put you in a program so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. Why not? At pettycliniclowt.com.
Get behind the wheel of the 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland at Allen Samuels in Waco. Choose between 2 or 3 rows and save $12,000 or take advantage of 0% financing. Looking for something smaller? Drive home a 2024 Jeep Longitude 4x4 and save $9,760 or take 0% financing and get $3,000. Don't miss out during the Make This the Summer of Jeep event at Allen Samuels in Waco, where we deliver your next adventure. See dealer for details.
Come by. Let's be friends.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Ghost Hydration is a fully transparent, fully loaded, full-flavored hydration drink that we've all been waiting for. Ghost is caffeine-free with electrolytes, 0 sugar, and low sodium that'll hydrate your body before, during, and after your workout. Consumer loved with authentic flavors, so grab and enjoy a Sour Patch Kids Blue Raspberry and Red Berry, along with the Kiwi Strawberry, Orange Squeeze, or Lemon Lime. Ghost Hydration can truly be used anytime. Remember, it's formulated for sports, but made for life.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
When you work with a bank, you should expect the best of everything. That includes face-to-face personal service and the kind of community banking care that only comes from one neighbor to another. That's exactly what you'll get from the First National Bank of Central Texas, where you will know your banker works just as hard as you do. Once again, that's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Settle for nothing less than the first. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Kelly Quinlan, Yahoo and Rivals, covers Georgia Tech football, but college football in general. He is in Dublin, Ireland. That's where Saturday's game, Florida State, Georgia Tech, will be played. And by the way, Kelly, before we start, don't give any of those secret plays, because we have an FSU alum who's a part of this show who will absolutely contact Mike Norvell, knowing him the way we do. So thanks for your time. What's it like in Dublin?
It's quite blustery. It's about 60 degrees and howling winds. So about what you'd expect for this time of year. It's going to be pretty cool on a Saturday evening here in Dublin.
Kelly, what is the biggest thing that Georgia Tech has improved on after a surprising season last year to this year, you think?
They're really good on offense last year. I think the defense has taken a big step forward with Tyler Santucci, the new defensive coordinator. Mike Elko, disciple. I'm sure you guys talk a lot about what's going on at A&M these days, and kind of that defensive philosophy of being attacking, being aggressive on defense, and trying to be more downhill, I think, and that's a big thing that Tyler Santucci is bringing to the table. They're trying to be more physical and attacking instead of just reacting. And, the defense last year, I think, was very predicated on let's try to make some turnovers, strip the football, make some big plays, but they were not as good at fundamentals and down, run stopping, run fits, things like that. I think the defense has made huge strides there.
Kelly, Haynes King, back for another year in the saddle, had some really good moments last year, turned the ball over a bit too much at times, certainly, but I don't know, seems like he's poised and kind of the head of the spear here. If Georgia Tech has a big year, just what's the kind of excitement level around him, and what's the expectations just as far as what people want to see and need to see from him this year?
It's funny, Brent Key went so far as to say he's the best quarterback in the ACC.
Okay.
Yesterday. So the expectations are ratcheted up pretty high. I think, people forget with Haynes, he played at A&M, yes, but he didn't play a lot. Like, he got hurt a game and a half into his first season, then kind of was benched in that really weird 2022 season. Just hadn't played a lot until last year. So he made a lot of what we call young guy mistakes, forcing the ball in the coverage, maybe relying too much on pre-snap reads with what the defense was doing, forcing balls. And, it's not high school anymore, and I think it took a little bit of adjustment. And I think his run game came along as well. He got a little healthier, and he was really dynamic as kind of a dual threat guy. I think the big evolution for him is just eliminating those dumb turnovers. He had quite a few just forced throws that were bad decisions on his part. And if he can clean that up, I think they're in for a huge step forward for him. And I think he definitely has a chance to be in that conversation with one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC if he does that.
Well, one of the things he did in high school at Longview, he was a gunslinger. He was not afraid to try to, throw it through a keyhole, and then that got him at A&M as well. Is that just kind of also, even if he tries to avoid that more often, that's just his style? When he plays well, that's what he does?
Yeah, Chris Winkie, the quarterback's coach who played at Florida State, won the Heisman there, knows a thing or two about quarterback play.
Yeah.
And he said he compared him to Brett Favre. He said that he's like that kind of guy. Like he's gonna, he's gonna screw up every once in a while, but he's gonna make some amazing plays. You kind of live with it because of the ups that he will bring you as, like you said, a gunslinger. And you don't want to take that aggressiveness away. And that's a big thing Lester Faulkner, the offensive coordinator, talked about too. Like, don't take away what makes him special. You want to figure out how to make him make better decisions in those situations, but you also don't want to take away the aggressiveness.
How do you think this game will play out stylistically? Florida State's offense will probably look a little bit different than it did last year, given the fact that they lost a ton of their skill players, maybe more running the game. Do you think that they're going to try to run with Florida State, or do you think that this will be maybe more of a tug of war?
I think this is going to be a tug of war. I was here in 2016 when Georgia Tech played Boston College. I've watched quite a few of these games over the years. All the ones except for when Navy's played in this game and been overmatched have been just absolute slugfest. Games that were won in the fourth quarter, a lot of low-scoring games. The weather can be dicey. It's going to be kind of probably in the 50s by the time the game really gets going. And these guys have been practicing in 90-plus degree temperatures for the last month. So it's just going to be a different animal. And I think the whole vibe is just totally different than anything. Maybe other than like some of those weird COVID games that teams play with no fans. Other than that, I think it's just so weird. The environment, it's sort of like being in a bowl game where they play in a baseball stadium or something. It just is very different than a normal college football game. So I think there's going to be a lot of adjustments. And then, you have Florida State with so many replacement players on their team. I'm curious what that all looks like too.
Do you feel like that they're over there now? They started workouts. I think I saw even video of Florida State practicing. Are 2 days of practice and then maybe whatever they do on Friday enough to get used to the surroundings?
So I think everybody's coming over tonight,
Okay.
leaving tonight.
Okay.
And I know Tech gets in tomorrow morning. I'm pretty sure Florida State does too. I think they have that all set up. But yeah, so they'll come in Thursday morning. Basically, everybody will do like a walkthrough kind of practice, and that's it. There's not really. A couple of years ago, they were here for like almost a week. I think they decided to make it less like a bowl game and more like just kind of one-off special experience. So they trimmed down the time. The jet lag's weird. You just either you sleep or you don't on the plane, and you make yourself stay up when you get here and adjust to the time, and that's all you can do.
Kelly Quinlan with us on 365 Sports on Georgia Tech football.
Kelly, is Georgia Tech deep enough? Should they, let's say they start out and win this game, are they deep enough to make a run and be in the ACC title game at the end of the year?
So, what I've said since the beginning of the year is if the offense plays at a similar pace to a year ago, the defense was like bottom. It was literally like the second worst defense in the ACC. So if they jump to 75 nationally, 70, I think that puts them on the bubble. The problem for Georgia Tech is the non-conference schedule is a little rough. You have Notre Dame and Georgia at Georgia to end the season on Black Friday. So I think that, nationally that'll hurt their ranking, but I absolutely think they have an opportunity in the ACC. They just have a harder slate. If you look at how they split the votes in the preseason in the ACC, Georgia Tech plays like 7 of the top 8 teams. And most of the other teams that are being picked as favorites don't. So they have a tougher schedule on paper, but again, those things tend to kind of cancel themselves out as the season goes on, whether it's Miami or whoever kind of falls on their face early in the year. And then those games become less hard as the season goes on. So I think no one really knows because of the portal now. It's much harder to handicap all these things in the preseason, but they absolutely have a very good offense and a very good special teams unit, and the defense should be much improved. And I think that's a good recipe to get yourself in the mix for Charlotte.
Anytime we've had somebody who covers, writes, columnist, or broadcaster of the ACC or a team in the ACC, we ask them about what has been a tumultuous offseason. Can't wait for games to be played, so that will be the focus no matter what happens with the ACC and Florida State, Clemson, et cetera. How much of that even resonates with Atlanta, Georgia, and Georgia Tech?
I think everyone's kind of actively following along with what has been going on, but most people kind of see it for what it is. These are long-term plays. Like Florida State's making a long-term play to get out of the league. Nothing's going to happen for years. This is going to be a prolonged legal battle. There's zero incentive for the ACC to settle with them, and no one's going to touch them until their rights are clear, because it basically forces any other league, if you start to invalidate the grant of rights, it would put pure chaos basically for every other league, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to happen, I think everyone's kind of watching it, but the reality is Georgia Tech and Atlanta, if they're decent in football and the basketball team's getting better, they will have a seat at one of the three big tables if it were to, devolve into three power conferences and you have some sort of weird merger of the ACC and Big 12 and then some teams peel off to the SEC and Big 10. I think they have a seat at one of those three tables just because of where they are, the history, and what they can bring to the table. So that's sort of where Georgia Tech fans are in it. I think ultimately everyone would like to see the ACC kind of figure things out, but I think it's very difficult to do. You guys just saw that with the Big 12 and Texas and Oklahoma. If you start catering to teams, it kind of basically ruins the conference, and they're trying to avoid that, I think, right now with Clemson and Florida State.
What do you mentioned the history. They have a fantastic history that I think a lot of people don't realize, because post 1990, they haven't won a national title, but they were good for, deep into the 90s, into the early part of the 2000s. And then they've had little patches of good stretches, but has there been a reason for the downshift in football from a leadership perspective of the university that's maybe now just getting restarted, or were they just, maybe caught kind of flat-footed like a lot of universities are in the arms race?
So there was sort of a two-folded issue. The first one was when George O'Leary was here, right before he left taking the Notre Dame job, he convinced them to expand the stadium. They took on basically $200 million in debt to do this, and created a stadium that was too large for the fan base. Okay. So that wasn't even paying for itself. Then that debt turned into this thing that kept getting rolled into more debt and more debt. And then around the time that Paul Johnson got hired, the AD at the time was so worried about the debt, he basically became very cheap with everything they did. And so that's why I hired Paul Johnson. That's why they cheaped out on defensive coordinators. They made lots of these penny-pinching decisions for about a span of, 10 years. And there was a change in leadership, the change in the school president, the AD got fired. Several ADs have been processed during that time. And now they have sort of an aligned AD president, and the two coaches in the main sports are actually having success on the field and recruiting well. So it's basically the first time, I've covered them since 2009. It's the first time I've really seen this since my first year on the beat, where things are somewhat aligned and they actually have positive momentum. But one was just, financially driven issues. And the other thing was the rise of the SEC. And that kind of killed a lot of the recruiting, just the hype around the SEC and all that stuff. And then things like Huddle and having people recruit Atlanta harder and the state of Georgia harder over the last 10, 15 years also impacted recruiting for teams like Georgia Tech. But even if you step down a level, Georgia Southern or those type of schools all felt the impact from the way recruiting has become more nationalized for every team in the country.
Kelly, you were in France prior to flying into Dublin, right?
France, Switzerland, and Italy.
So how long have you been out of the country?
I left on the 17th, I think, something like that.
Oh, so that's almost a month. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, just got a little vacation in.
Do you miss America yet? Or, it sounds like you've been to some pretty awesome places.
Yeah, I spent, yesterday I was in the Matterhorn in Switzerland. I think it's 13,000 feet up, on a glacier. So, I'm doing okay right now. I think, by the end of the week I'll miss my kids, and my wife just left to go back to America to take care of the kids. So, I'll probably miss her too by that point. But yeah, right now I'm still doing okay.
That's a great trip.
We don't have glaciers, but you can get
trying to make something special.
But you can get a big gulp with a bunch of ice, so that's kind of the same.
It's funny, man. They give you ice here. It's like 3 little tiny cubes of ice. Like if you get ice, and you're lucky if you get ice. Like it's like what you would get at, not even in a bar. Like it's like if you were like you walked to the end at a party and someone had like an ice container. And like what was left in the bottom of the ice container at the end of the party. That's what you get in your glass.
We had Liam Rooney on, who covers Florida State for the Tallahassee Democrat, and he was in a scrum, I guess, before they left for Dublin, among other members of the media, and there was a debate about McDonald's. And he says that McDonald's, like the chicken nuggets, are better in Ireland than they are even in the country that discovered and invented McDonald's because of the chicken and how fresh it is when they get it.
Yeah, so like there's like rules like in France, like things have to be a certain distance from where you are to like be cooked in a restaurant. Like it's just totally different than there's no like extruded chicken goo like they make the McNuggets out of in America. Like, and it's not, and I'm not knocking that. I like some chicken McNuggets, but it is totally different. The eating is completely different. Like it's like little small meals. You walk everywhere. I have car rentals here and have driven, but I've done a ton of walking. I move over 10,000 steps every day, just walking around doing stuff. So I see why like we're fat Americans and like everyone's skating in Europe and stuff. I get it now. Like, but it is very funny to see the differences and like just the lifestyle and like how more laid back a lot of people are and stuff about things. So it is just a very different culture.
Good for you, man. What a great trip, memorable trip. And now you got a football game. The season begins. You're going to be a part of it by covering Florida State, Georgia Tech in Dublin. Hey, thanks for your time, Kelly. Great feedback on where you are, where you've been, and also what we have coming up this weekend. Have a great week, the rest of the week there.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Kelly Quinlan with us from Rivals and also Yahoo Sports covering college football and also Georgia Tech.
Yeah, that's a dream trip for me, just to be over there and hit a bunch of countries and go and see. I've never been to Europe before, so really would love to.
Well, get on that.
Yeah, I know. Look, I have no, like, if I told my wife we were going on vacation for a month in Europe, she'd be like, great. Like, there wouldn't even be a fight. They wouldn't even be like, I'd be like, here, pick the places you want to go. And
where was it that you wanted? There was a place in Europe that, like, recently we were talking about an event. Was it Paris? Where was it you said you wanted to?
I mean, I wanted to be at this one for sure.
Well, yeah, obviously.
But I would love to go to Wimbledon. I've always wanted to go to Wimbledon. For sure. And
man, that has fallen off my radar of importance.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd like,
but I get
too.
It. I get the history.
But like, if somebody told me like, hey, you want to go to Wimbledon? I totally would. Just to be there. And I would love to go to like, I may try to go to the Olympics in 2028 in LA because it'll be easier to get to, but I do feel like I'll lose a little of the Olympic luster because I've been to LA. I would have loved to be in Paris for these Olympics.
No, that would have been cool. Yeah. I mean, RG3 was there for the whole stint.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm going to Europe for sports, I'm going to go see a big-time soccer game.
Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't turn down a Wimbledon ticket, but it wouldn't be on my wish list necessarily. But I'd whether it's Bundesliga or La Liga or Premier League or whatever, just something in Europe would be pretty cool at the highest level. Yeah, I would enjoy that. But this is a really cool trip. You know, it's obviously different starting a week earlier than everybody. Don't know if there's any really ramifications from that last with you, just the travel. And, you know, if this was the first year of the college football playoff, there'd be body clock talk, and that would somehow be used for or against their narrative they were trying to push later this year. But, yeah, your body clocks get off to a weird start, but I'm sure the trip and just the stuff that comes with that is well worth it. And, yeah, I'm excited to see this game being played and getting everything rolling for this season. And if I was a Florida State or Georgia Tech fan, yeah, I'd love to be there. I think Georgia Tech's really intriguing because of the way that they finished last year on a strong note, beat UCF in the bowl game. And Haynes King really put up some great numbers, not just throwing the ball, but he ran really well. He had big numbers on the ground. I think you've got to obviously cut down on the turnovers, but They are a team that, found their way to a bowl game, got a little bit lucky. They had the Miami game, if you'll remember, that they should not have won, and they did, and that helped get them into the postseason. But I think that's some momentum that you hope carries over. And offensively, I don't see any reason why they can't be pretty damn good, because it's not just Haynes King. It's all their top dogs are basically coming back. So, yeah, that defense is the question mark for sure for the Yellow Jackets.
This game in Dublin started back in 1988. It was during the end part of the season when Boston College beat Army. Army was 8-1, and they had Notre Dame's been there, the Naval Academy 2 years ago. Nebraska lost to Northwestern, and then last year Notre Dame hammered Navy. This year Florida State and Georgia Tech. When we come back, he runs the Heisman podcast. The Heisman pundit, Chris Houston, joins us next. His thoughts about this year's Heisman Trophy and maybe any tweaks to it as we move forward. And, of course, the list of some great candidates for 2024. This is 365 Sports. The Baylor Club. You can join today. Exclusive benefits, including access to premium dining, social events, and networking opportunities with fellow members of the club. Breathtaking views of McLean Stadium and the Brazos River. You can see the pavilion the Foster Pavilion, where Baylor has their basketball games just across the bridge and on the opposite catty corner of the Brazos River. Looking for a perfect venue for your next event? We host our Academic All-Stars event there every May, and they set us up with great top-notch service and, of course, unbelievable food. Savor the taste of culinary experience with the diverse menu crafted by award-winning chefs. The Baylor Club promises an unforgettable dining experience for every palate. If you want to be there on game day, you can if you're a member of the Baylor Club. Mike Mosel, the general manager, if you go there, you look around, you want more information, let him know. The Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year, it's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's football and tailgate season. If you want product for the grill or smoker, charcoal, season these marinades, sauces, Waco Custom Marketplace is your home to help prep, cook, and enjoy your food. Tailgate must-like brisket, tri-tip, fresh-made burgers, sausage, chicken wings, and if you want steaks, call in your order and pick them up. Bacon wrap fillets or any kind of ribeyes. USDA Select, Choice, and Prime that melt in your mouth. House-made sausage and jerky. Also, Waco Custom Marketplace, a one-stop shop for tailgating, barbecue, cook-offs, and family get-togethers, fundraisers with fair prices to you, the customer. A bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches. There's cold beer, wine, and soft drinks. Serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. A cut above the rest. Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
I tell you what, this is a great guest. Chris Houston joins us. He has the Heisman Trophy podcast, in which they launched one or released the latest one today with Pat Forty, among other guests as well. Runs the Heisman Pundit and, of course, the Heisman Trophy, the ultimate award in all of college football as we started this weekend. Chris, thank you very much. Great to see you. Give me an idea. Now, you ran Carson Palmer and Matt Leinert's Heisman campaigns in the past. Did that lead you to kind of what you're doing now with the Heisman?
100%. During that time, I was like any other sports information director out there, trying to market my player, trying to get them an award that I thought they deserved. And the whole process of learning about the Heisman, learning about who is out there, who are the voters. During that whole process, I learned a lot about the Heisman, and eventually I started a blog, HeismanPundit.com.
Mm-hmm.
And just over time, I just gained a lot of expertise about it, and eventually the Heisman brought me on.
Chris, because you were on that side of it before you started this, do you see things that you see as flaws in the marketing or things that people are trying to do? Like what kind of gets your goat when you watch from the outside, knowing it, that you've kind of seen both ends of this?
Yeah, what gets my goat the most is when you see sports information directors or PR people sort of keeping their powder dry, not going all out for their guy. I think a lot of people are worried that if they do a campaign or if they make the case for their player, that it's going to blow up in their face and that it's going to reflect poorly on them. But I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I think everyone knows that their player is potentially a Heisman winner, because anybody can win it, potentially. There's no restrictions. And I don't think enough PR people or sports information directors or whatever you want to call them these days, because that whole profession is changing. I don't think enough of them understand that just having the name Heisman Trophy candidate in front of, having the words Heisman Trophy candidate in front of that name goes a long way to identifying a player as being a quality player. So I get disappointed when schools don't back their player.
Chris, is it impossible for non-offensive skill guys to win this award?
No, I don't think so. I think it would just take a lot of creativity. It would take what I've been calling for years is creating metrics that would enable voters to sink their teeth into the differences between players. For example, we have all kinds of metrics out there that are private when it comes to things like offensive linemen. You always talk about offensive line coach saying, oh, well, this guy graded well in this game, this guy graded well in another game. Well, let's see those grades. Let's know how many assignments this player was able to fulfill during the course of a game. These types of this type of data is important to be able to differentiate players. Now, it's going to be obviously a long haul because the Heisman starts with the ball. The person who touches the ball the most is going to have the best chance of winning, and that starts with the quarterback, running back, receiver. Where you can take the matters into your own hands and not have to depend on other people around you to make a great play. Quarterbacks have more of an ability to do that. So do running backs. Receivers a little bit less so because they depend on the quarterback. But non-skill offensive players, I think it's going to be a very tough situation. But that's why we have really smart people out there to come up with new angles.
So what was it like when the news came down that Reggie Bush was going to be reinstalled officially as a Heisman Trophy winner?
Well, I think for those of us who work with the Heisman, I think it was a relief. I think you go look at the list of Heisman winners, and there was this big gap for 2005. You'd go 2004, Matt Leinart, 2006, Troy Smith. They're just, it was a little bit awkward. So it's nice to have that resolved. It's nice to have the list complete. It's nice to be able to, for example, say USC has 8 Heisman winners instead of 7 with an asterisk and blah, blah, blah. And I just think it's great to just resolve that, get it all in the past, and move forward.
Chris, where do you start? Like when you start the season, I'm sure you have watch lists and all these different things that you do, but how do you start breaking it down into what's legitimate to follow and what you have to maybe put on the back burner?
As far as Heisman candidates?
Yeah.
You mean? Well, what I tend to do is I look at trends throughout the history of the race, and there have been several different eras during the Heisman Trophy race that has resulted in certain positions dominating. In the 70s, you had the advent of these great running attacks: wishbone, flexbone, I formation over on the West Coast with USC. And so you saw from 1973 till 1983, running backs win the award every year, and then you had a few more after that. Eventually, as the game evolved, it became more of a sort of well-balanced group of winners. You had some quarterbacks, some running backs. That's when you had Charles Woodson come in and win it as basically a two-way player. But something happened around 2007 when Tim Tebow won, and that is with the advent of the spread offense and specifically the spread quarterback, you started seeing this incredible jump in the production of Heisman winners. You went from 2006, Troy Smith having roughly 2,500 yards passing. I think he had 30 touchdown passes. And you went from that to Tim Tebow suddenly producing over 4,000 yards of total offense, 51 touchdowns combined. And so over the course of the next several years, ever since 2007, every Heisman Trophy winning quarterback has averaged at least something like 4,300 yards of total offense, has compiled at least 40 touchdowns running and passing, has established a passing efficiency rate of at least a certain point, somewhere around 160 or above, 155 or above. So what I look for is who are these quarterbacks out there who have the potential to cross that, what seems to be this unofficial threshold of the last 15 years of you've got to produce numbers at this scale in order to be able to be considered a realistic Heisman candidate. So I look at the quarterbacks who have the potential in their systems with the players around them to put up those kinds of numbers. And I start from there.
What are your thoughts on the expansion of the playoffs? I mean, I know there's 1,000 other things that are different in college football nowadays, but this is obviously an award that's awarded before, the postseason. Otherwise there's the big, well, if it was later, Vince Young would have beaten Reggie, that whole conversation. But now you're going to have a team playing potentially, 4 playoff games if they don't get a bye in the first round. That won't affect the Heisman, but just what are your thoughts on having that extra element post December that is going to be there now?
Well, I think it's going to be more of a factor for the following year. You're going to have some guys who play 16, 17 games who have 6,000 yards passing, and they're going to be coming back for their next year. Maybe they're a sophomore when they did it and they couldn't go pro. So that's going to set up a lot of guys for the following season. You might get, a lot of what we see now, which is, this guy should have won because look at what he did. But I think that the Heisman, with all the tumult, all the chaos, all the change going on in college football, I think it's great that the Heisman is sort of the one thing you can latch onto, the one, the lighthouse in the storm that's not going anywhere, and having it be a regular season award where everything is pretty much equal. Now, it's true that some conferences have conference championship games and others don't, but that's starting to balance out a bit. And having the regular season, having it be a regular season award means that everyone plays the regular season. Not everybody plays the playoff. Not everybody's in a bowl game. Everyone is in the regular season, and you're comparing apples to apples. And I think having it as a regular season award, continuing to be so, and awarding that trophy the second Saturday in December, it's a great tradition. And if people want to argue about, this player should have won because look how well he did in the playoffs and look how poorly the winner did in that game, that's fine. And that's what college football is all about, just sitting around and arguing and trying to claim things that you can't really prove in the end, but they're fun to do.
Well, unless I'm wrong, the professional sports, NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, their overall MVP awards, aren't they very similar to the Heisman? They are regular season. It doesn't matter what a guy does in the postseason. It's who's the MVP of the regular season, because then there's a Super Bowl MVP or the finals MVP. So I love that to keep it that way. But it does
Yeah.
make it different now with the expanded playoff, without question.
Yeah, I think there's the opportunity now to have a playoff MVP in college football, and that'll be interesting. So, and of course the final game MVP, and all those awards are there for the taking for these players. But the Heisman is a special award. It's got an incredible tradition going back to 1935. The who's who of college football have won it. Generally, the most outstanding players, at least arguably the most outstanding players in college football, are competing for it every year, and the player that enough observers of the sport decide and kind of crowdsource together on this, decide who's the one to win it, and that's the guy who generally captures the spirit of the regular season. And as college football has always had a great regular season, the best regular season in sports, and the Heisman's a testament to that.
We're talking to Chris Hudson again. He's with the Heisman. He does the podcast, and he unveiled their podcast earlier. Houston, unveiled their podcast earlier today. Joined us on 365 Sports.
Chris, is there someone who has not won the Heisman since you've been doing this that you genuinely feel bad for?
I mean, there's these. Stanford had a stretch of Heisman runners up in the 2009 to 2016 period. Toby Gerhart lost by the closest race in Heisman history to Mark Ingram. Were it not for just a few ballots switched here and there, he wins the Heisman. And so I think Toby Gerhart might have been the guy who might have had the best case for why he should have won. Obviously had a great year. And then of course there was, Christian McCaffrey was a runner-up, but he was a runner-up to Derrick Henry. And then you certainly can't go wrong with Derrick Henry. So I don't really feel bad for any of them, but I certainly think that Toby Gerhart was a reasonable potential winner for Stanford.
Chris, do you ever think we'll see another back-to-back Heisman winner? We had that opportunity last year, and that seemed to get washed away pretty quickly with Caleb. Obviously, Jaden Daniels is off to the pros, but the historian in you, do you want to see it again, or is there something special about Archie Griffin being the only guy?
I don't know. It's a tough question. Every time someone seems like they might have a chance to do it, it's kind of intriguing. And maybe I think with Caleb Williams, I was thinking that potentially that he could be the one to do it. But I don't know. I think it's going to get harder and harder as the years go on because of things like the current media environment with short attention spans and just the way that all the pressure that's on these guys and the way that the sport is covered and always looking for the next new thing. And there usually always is a next new thing. So, and that's okay. I think it's fine that there's only one 2-time winner. I doubt there will ever be another one. I used to say that there will never be another one. I'll never say never, but I think the chances are very slim.
So what's it like working for where you are now? After someone who helped get Carson Palmer and Leinart in their situation, what's it like to be a part of that group?
That's pretty cool. It's great to be a part of this incredible tradition based in New York City. The Heisman is, and New York City is not a college football town, but it is the town for the Heisman Trophy. And being involved in that ceremony, the Heisman weekend, and seeing all the guys come back every year, and the camaraderie, the fraternity, getting the old stories, meeting the new winners and the new finalists who come every year. It's always a great experience touching base with some of the guys from the schools that are coming up that you've known over the years. Generally, just a fantastic experience. The Heisman's full of great people, and they do a great job. And they are very careful with taking care of the brand and image of the Heisman Trophy.
All right. So when you discuss what you did for Palmer and Leinart, do you consult others now? Do they reach out to you to get your advice on how to go about? Like we saw the Colin Klein. It was great. It was like a can with a Band-Aid on it. RG3 had that card with him. There's been some great PR campaigns. Do people consult with you?
I've had a couple people consult me over the years. If I was consulting with them right now, I'd say they should hire me some more because I've got a bunch of ideas every time, and I think that sports information directors are so darn busy through the years and throughout the season that they don't always have a chance to sit back and sort of let some ideas flow. And maybe, that's kind of where I come in a lot of situations and trying to control the narrative of what constitutes a Heisman Trophy candidate. But you're right. There's been some great campaigns over the years. The Northwestern quarterback from around 2012, 2013, whose name escapes me right now. It was Dan something, but they sent out a pair of dumbbells. And I remember thinking, wow, this is really cool. And definitely served to, they were always around. But I always thought the simplest, they're really hard to get rid of. How do you get rid of dumbbells? You can't really throw them in the trash. But, I think the simplest and most effective promotion that I think people don't do enough of anymore is the reporter notepad. You send out a reporter notepad to the media. And I remember back when I was in the media, I had this Iowa notepad. It wasn't even a Heisman candidacy. It was just Iowa honors candidates.
I know that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sitting on my desk.
Yeah.
Those you go to practice, you go to a game, and each time you pull that thing out of your back pocket, you're seeing Iowa. Whether you know you're seeing it or not, you're seeing it. This is part of marketing. It's part of branding. There's a reason why companies spend billions of dollars every year on marketing. It's because it works. It's not because it doesn't work, but there seems to be, and you will see, like clockwork, every year there is an article written by somebody talking about Heisman campaigns, and they interview sports information directors, and to a T, almost every one of them will say that Heisman campaigns don't really work. And I think that's this sort of, there's a little bit of humility ingrained into the profession where it's like we don't want to talk about our impact on these types of things because it's not seen as I don't know, as it's maybe a little tacky to say, oh, I helped this person win. But it's true. Every little bit helps, and you should always err on the side of trying to help your guy win a trophy. When I was at USC, my motto was, it's my job to make an All-American out of someone who doesn't deserve it.
Wow. Yeah.
I think that the College Football Hall of Fame would be a cool exhibit to find, some of those things like Heisman marketing materials from the past.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Even ones that people who didn't win the Heisman, like Colin Klein Band-Aid thing, I kept that because I thought it was so cool. Threw about 4 moves before it finally just disappeared somewhere. So
Ryan Leaf had the leaf back in they sent out a leaf. Washington State sent it out. Oregon, you can look at the genesis of the Oregon football program. Really starts with Joey Harrington's billboard in Times Square, right? And it's people miss the point. It's not that it's the secondary coverage of the event, not the fact that the fact that there's a billboard was the story. It's not the fact that it's not going to be seen by any Heisman voters walking through Times Square necessarily. It's the fact that this is a big deal and we're going to talk about it, and people are going to agree with it or not agree with it. But everyone who listens to this is going to come away with the idea that this guy's a Heisman Trophy finalist or a candidate.
You can go to Heisman.com. You could also, on the top, they have the winners. They have the podcast, of which Chris is a part of. And I mentioned that they released an episode today. I never once received something in the mail, and I've been fortunate now for the last, 5 or 6 years or so to be a Heisman voter. But even well before that, I never received something in the mail that I thought was tacky. And it never I was like, ooh, I always thought it was pretty cool, people coming up with the different ideas. Do you get to, I would think so, but do you get to pretty much interview any Heisman Trophy winner you want based on their availability?
Oh yeah, just a little note on that. I think people like to pretend that these things are tacky, but secretly they gather them all together like army men and play with them.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
We have great access to a lot of Heisman winners. Last year we talked to Archie Griffin, we talked to Ricky Williams, we talked to Ty Detmer, we talked to Danny Werfel, we talked to a lot of guys I think who won in the 90s. Those are the guys who right now seemed to be the most active with the Heisman organization, the 80s and 90s. I talked to Tim Brown as well. Unfortunately, some of the guys who are a little bit older, it's a little bit harder to get them, wired up on a podcast like this. And we're trying to get some of the newer guys. Of course, a lot of the current guys are busy with the NFL. But yeah, we get a lot of great Heisman winners on the show. We usually do a full deep dives into their seasons, find out what they were thinking. I mean, Barry Sanders, I got to interview Barry Sanders last year, and that was just outstanding because he's not a guy who's done a lot of media over the years. So getting him on the show is great. We even talked to Mike Krzyzewski, the Duke basketball coach, who is the Heisman's Humanitarian Award winner from 2022. This is an award the Heisman gives out because the Heisman is a charitable organization. They do a lot for underserved communities, and they honor every year a sports figure who has done a lot in that world, in the charity world. And Mike Krzyzewski was the winner in 2022, and I got to talk to Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K, on one of the episodes last year. So that was really cool. So the Heisman opens a lot of doors as far as guests go, and I really hope that more people listen because it's a great show. There's great content. It's really unlike any show or any podcast you'll have out there. We try to do less and less of sort of, talking heads arguing about things, even though that's entertaining. With the Heisman, we wanted to tell stories, entertain, inform, and really connect people back to this great heritage and great tradition that is the Heisman Trophy.
Well, Heisman Pundit, of course, is where you can find Chris, but also Heisman.com/podcast for the latest podcast of the podcast also.
Or any streaming network is, the pod. You can
Apple
find it
and all that.
Spotify,
yeah.
Apple,
Spotify.
all of it. Yeah, absolutely.
We will, and I hope we'll get back in touch with you, and maybe as the season progresses, pick your brain a little bit. We appreciate it. Great segment, Chris. We appreciate your time.
Loved being on here. Would love to come back. Thanks so much.
All right, Chris Houston with us, retired stockbroker with a super chat. Thank you for the time. That's Chris Houston from the Heisman Trophy. He mentioned retired stockbroker asked this question if he wanted me to ask Chris, did RG3 undercut Case Keenum? Case Keenum finished 7th that year. Was a hell of a player in college, put up huge numbers. But RG3, Andrew Luck was a part of that down the stretch.
Oh, he's one of those runner-ups, and RG3, he went from being on the fringe of the race. Like, certainly the way that they started the year that year, he was in the conversation because he didn't throw an interception for 400 passes. It wasn't that many, but it was crazy. He was putting up crazy numbers. Then they had this A&M Oklahoma state stretch back to back.
Yep.
They got thumped, and then through 3 quarters of playing a bad Kansas team, they were going to lose that game.
And he took off.
And then in the 4th quarter, it's like they said, well, this needs to be over now. Whatever slump this is needs to be over. They beat Kansas, and then he just shot up, and everything else after that was
crescendo when he hit Terrence Williams against Oklahoma on the touchdown pass.
Yeah, that was very clearly his Heisman moment, and appreciate Chris. That was good stuff, interesting stuff. Just taking a look at the award and a lot of the particulars and just history and things like that. It was a nice little change of pace and something different. So appreciate his time. And I was just sitting there thinking, RG3, like, what are the odds of that happening again? Him taking a program like that, who's not really much on the map, certainly wasn't at that time, and putting them on the map. Not just as a first-time Heisman Trophy winner. I think just like Baylor itself and like where it was in the brains of college football fans. Like, he took them to a level that like nobody could have ever predicted. No matter how much money you pump into something, no matter how many political ties you have, like, he took a program that me growing up would tell you 10 times out of 10 was the worst college football program in the entire country. Who's the worst team in the world? Baylor. Like, they were a running joke my entire life growing up. And then he made them serious for the first time, in my time as a college football fan. Now, I was thinking, though, like, with that, like, nobody's going to be able to probably take a program to a different level like he did. There have, though, been a couple of first-time at-a-school Heisman Trophy winners, and I was wondering in my head, that's where this all kind of started, like, who else has been the first time ever? It's actually happened twice since RG3. Granted, it's been 10-plus years. But 2 winners since 2011, have been the first in their program's history. Do y'all know who those 2 guys are?
Say that again. I'm sorry. Say that again. I didn't.
Who are the 2 Heisman Trophy winners that are the first-time winners in their program's history since RG3 won the award.
Is Mark Ingram one of them, or is he before?
No.
He was on that like 10 or whatever. 9
Okay.
or 10.
Okay. Yeah, because he was the first at Alabama.
Yeah. Yeah, that was like a couple of years before.
Yeah.
It
Garrett?
was. Go ahead.
Oh, I thought Garrett had somebody.
Marcus Mariota at Oregon and Lamar Jackson at Louisville were both first time at their school winners. So that's happened a couple times since RG3. But yeah, LSU, USC, Alabama, LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama. Like it's hard to
you
do
had
it
a
the
hell of
first
a
time.
run, no question. And Alabama, remember, up until Ingram did not have one. Out of all that history, I remember Johnny Musso back when I think Johnny Rodgers won it in 72, was the runner-up perhaps to him in 72. Since the Big 12 was formed in 96, Ricky Williams won it in 1998, Eric Crouch in 2001, Jason White won it, Sam Bradford won it, RG3 won it, and then also, of course, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray also won it from inside the Big 12.
So congratulations to the SEC on your 5 new Heismans or 6 new Heismans and your no, they got more than that because of Texas combined as well. But, yeah, all those guys you mentioned, none of those teams except for Baylor's in the league still.
That's right, because Nebraska with Crouch is gone too. Yeah.
They're all that's
right.
gone.
When we come back, Dan Lyons from Athlon's College Football, he wrote an article about ranking the FBS conferences 1 through 9. A little background on that. He's next. This is 365 Sports. TexasBeefHouse.com. They have their next live auction. Go to TexasBeefHouse.com for more information. And what will pop up on the home screen is next auction, August 28th and 29th, which, of course, is next week. You can create an account. They have bidonbeef.com that runs their auctions. And I mentioned this the other day. My goodness, what they have as far as this next one, the event that includes all the steak you could imagine. Every type of steak you can imagine, from ribeyes to tomahawks to a New York strip, and even more than that. They have different lots. They have a lot where you can go in and, for example, it might be this price per pound. There's one called the dinner party. There's also one called the backyard griller. There's another lot. There's more than one of each. The tailgate special, perfect for what's coming on with the college football season. Tex-Mex, the fold over, these are available. The Vaquero, Snack Pack, and more. Slow and Steady is another one. All of these lots available. Steak, and more. Next, it's August 28th and 29th. For more information, go to TexasBeefHouse.com.
At Genco, our goal is to build long-lasting relationships while providing complete financial solutions for each step of life's journey. Our members enjoy fewer fees, lower rates on loans of all types, and higher yields on a wide variety of savings options. That's just a small part of the credit union difference. Visit Genco online, on Facebook, or come by one of our 5 locations today. Apply online for membership. Genco FCU, NCUA Equal Housing Lender.
My money, my future, my credit union, Genco.
Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
To
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Dan Lyons, senior college football writer for Athlon Sports, has also been at Sports Illustrated and elsewhere, and he joins us on 365 Sports with Craig and Paul. David Smoak. He ranked the FBS conferences 1 through 9, and Dan, thank you for your time. I would think everyone would there's always going to be some sort of a debate between 1 and 2, the SEC, Big Ten, and then there's that Big 12 ACC. But you took on all 9. How much of a project was that for you?
It was a bit of a project, obviously. I was at SEC Media Days and Big Ten Media Days a couple weeks ago, so I was pretty up on those leagues, but I'm still rounding into form as we get into the season here starting this weekend, and then obviously the big week next week. So I did a lot of research on the Sun Belt and the AAC, and had to remember which of those teams are in which leagues now because the whole sport's been upended the last couple of years. So it was a bit of an undertaking, but it was a fun one and a good way to kind of get myself oriented as we get into football here in a couple days.
The AAC still the fifth best, or still the fifth best conference. Or I guess it would have been the 6th best before, but still up there. Even though a lot of their teams have been harvested, is that because they've done the best harvesting of the other teams from the other leagues?
I think it's a combination. I think they still have the best top tier among. I would say the AAC, the Mountain West, and the Sun Belt are all pretty interchangeable. I went with the AAC at 5 just because of those top teams they have left. UTSA has been very impressive. Memphis is arguably the favorite to make the college football playoff in that group of 5 spot this year. USF took a huge leap last year, has a really explosive offense, and could be a contender for that spot as well. So I just thought the top tier of that league was a little bit better than what the Mountain West and what the Sun Belt brings. But I do think it's a pretty far cry from where we saw the AAC a few years ago when they had Houston and Cincinnati and UCF at a pretty deep league. Now, the bottom half of that league is a little more suspect when you have schools like Charlotte and Temple, which, has not really rebounded after that string of coaching successes it had. So that's dragging it down a bit where it was pretty clearly the next league. And I know Mike Oresco, the former commissioner, loved to call it the Power Six at the time. Now it's far closer to the Mountain West and the Sun Belt at the top of the group of 5, I think.
You've got the Big 12 at number 3 and then the ACC at 4. How tough of a decision was it to break the tie between the two, or to give the leg up to one or the other?
I think that's a pretty close one. I think you could go either way. If you have a vintage Florida State or a vintage Clemson season, you might give the edge to the ACC. They have the more proven national title winners, although it's been a couple of years, especially for Clemson. They're still finding their way in the new transfer portal era, which Dabo has been so reluctant to get involved in. I think the Big 12 just has the more fun group up top, to put it quite frankly. I think the imports from the Pac-12, Utah and Arizona should both be in the mix. Kansas State should have one of its best years in recent memory. Obviously, they won the Big 12 a couple of years ago, but they could be a playoff contender. Utah should step right in and be a playoff contender. So I just thought there was more interesting things happening in the top tier of that league versus the ACC, where you have, Miami could be very good this year, but we've seen this so many times before where they enter with big top 10 aspirations and don't quite get there. And then I think the middle of the league is a bit stronger. The ACC could come through if you have a Georgia Tech and Syracuse step up, but I just trust the middle of the Big 12 a bit more at this point.
What do you think the addition of SMU? I know Cal Stanford also knew, but the SMU doesn't seem like they're wanting to walk through the front door. One thing they'll not want, but walking through the front door and they feel like they can be a player immediately.
Yeah, I think SMU has the highest expectations of the new ACC schools. Stanford's probably going to be towards the bottom of the league, Cal somewhere in the middle. SMU is such an impressive offense. They've really had that program rolling for a few years. They enter with a solid quarterback in Preston Stone. I think it's a really interesting addition. It's one where, SMU was kind of languishing for so long. It isn't like one of those programs that has been at the top of those like group of five lists for too long, but obviously they have the investment behind it, which was a big deal in getting in the door, and they're very willing to throw their money around and throw their prowess around. So, the ACC, it's interesting to see the league get into Texas. Obviously, that's flown a bit under the radar compared to getting into California, which is such a kind of a mind-twisting thing for the ACC. But no, I think SMU's expectations are really high, and they're entering the league at a good time considering what talent they have on the roster. You've seen other schools change leagues and struggle right out the gate, and SMU's a chance to, I don't think they'll compete for the league, but they have a chance to compete to be in the top five.
Dan Lyons, Athlon Sports with us, covering college football, 365 Sports.
Dan, what do you see as the gap between the SEC and Big Ten, if there is one, in the depth and talent of either league? I mean, obviously you have the SEC ranked number one. The Big Ten has new teams, that are all, especially Oregon, all really good as well. But do you see the SEC maybe, having a bit of a lead in the race that even the Big Ten, as big as it is going to have to catch up on?
Yeah, I think the difference is with the Big Ten, you have Ohio State and Oregon, who are 2 and 3 in the polls entering the year. They're both major favorites to make the playoff. And then after that, you have to kind of find a story to how does Michigan get back without Harbaugh, without J.J. McCarthy, with basically a whole new offense. Penn State has been on the cusp, but they still have to find some more explosiveness on offense, and they've just really struggled to win the big game. And then you get into your Iowas, your USC teams that were deeply flawed last year that are have to really find something on a full side of the ball to become a playoff type caliber team. In the SEC, I think you can talk yourself into 8 teams being somewhere in the mix. Even if you get down to Oklahoma or Tennessee, it's not that hard to paint a picture where one of those teams is a playoff team. So I just think you have that depth in the second tier of team that really sets the SEC apart as number one, even though I would probably argue that Ohio State is the most talented team in the country this year, and I think Oregon is right locked in there, and wouldn't shock me if they win that league. It's just behind them, you don't have as many teams that seem like legitimate, potential national title teams, whereas the SEC, there are lots of questions, but I think at least half the league is somewhere where, things break right, guys come along and really max out their potential, and you have potential playoff teams there.
How often did you have to go and look to make sure who was in what conference at this point?
Oh, it wasn't so bad in the Power Four, and I keep on calling it the Power Five. That's going to take a while. It is really the AAC, the Sun Belt, and Conference USA is just a mess. It's all those leagues overlap geographically. It's really all over the place. So I think that's going to be kind of an ongoing process. But I've gotten better at it in going through the exercise of making this article. So I'm happy to have that experience now.
So your thoughts, you've seen the AP and the coaches poll that's come out, and obviously most everybody that I think if we would have all had our top 10 would have been in that area, 10 through maybe 12 or so. Anybody, in your opinion, that's a little, I used this term yesterday, that's a little over-modulated, and is there a program or two you feel like that might or should be getting a little bit more attention?
Yeah, overmodulated is a fun one. Florida State, I just have a lot of questions about. They were a great team last year. Obviously, their exclusion from the playoff was basically defining the end of the season until we got into Michigan winning the national championship. I do think they're getting a little bit inflated coming off of the success of last season. I am not a huge believer in DJ Uiagalelei. He obviously made progress at Oregon State after being fairly disappointing at Clemson. I think they'll be a good team. I don't know that they'll be a top 10 team, and that is where they're slotted in, at least in the AP poll, they're number 10. In terms of underrated teams, Kansas State, I think they're just such a solid program. Chris Kleiman has them really rolling. A lot of it will come down to whether Avery Johnson is really going to be at least match, if not take a step forward from what Will Howard gave them last year. But obviously the noise coming out of Manhattan has been that he is an incredibly dynamic quarterback. So that gives them really another dimension if they kind of take that offense to the next level.
What are your thoughts with the college football 12 about how everything breaks down? Obviously, the group of five, the best, highest-rated conference champion is in. It gives them an opportunity. That's all you could hope for. And the question is how many of the other conferences get the remaining at large? Do you feel like most of those, or maybe even all of them, will go to the SEC and Big Ten?
Yeah, I think it'll be the vast majority. I would be surprised if it was less than like 8 between those two leagues. It's just, there's such a depth of talent atop those two leagues. If you look at the AP poll, 15 of the top preseason top 25 are from those two leagues. And obviously that doesn't really dictate what happens once we get to November. But I just think you're given a lot of opportunity for big wins. At the same time, you can see teams kind of cannibalize each other, which is a concern, I would say. But we've seen the voters in previous years really lend credence to teams from those big conferences, and also kind of ignore some of the scrappy teams in the group of fives, or even, startups in the ACC. So it'll be fascinating to see, but I would be very surprised if this wasn't largely an SEC and Big Ten invitational, and we have a couple other teams trying to sneak their way through.
Dan Lyons with his Athlons with us on 365 Sports.
How much of the SEC's prowess is earned, and how much of it is also because of the marketing that they've done, which is better than anybody?
It is definitely better than anybody. I will say it is largely earned. There have been years where you have like the third or fourth SEC team really doesn't look that impressive, but entering this season, we saw Texas go to the college football playoff last year. Alabama obviously will have questions about Nick Saban, but I think everyone is fairly confident about Kalen DeBoer given his background and given what they have returning. And then, Ole Miss, which is right behind them in the AP poll. They had a great season last year, arguably the best season in probably since the 50s for that program. So this year specifically, I think a lot of it has been earned on the field, and we're entering with a lot of information about these teams. That doesn't mean that there won't be some years where the SEC winds up getting 6 teams in the playoff when really they should have had 4. But this year would not surprise me if things are really tilted that way, just because of all the returning talent, all the quarterback talent, and just the stacked rosters that some of these coaches have built with the transfer portal and everything else.
We have games starting this weekend, Dan. How much help? How much I think emotional health in a way that we actually have games and then results, and then we can break all that down, and not everything is about realignment or everything else. That's always there, but how much fun just the fact that there are games about to start.
I'm so excited. I think it's really starting to hit me this week. Just even Florida State, Georgia Tech, like that's not the flashiest game. Georgia Tech's unranked, but that team made progress last year. Florida State has questions. Like that could be a fun game out in Ireland, and we saw a pretty fun atmosphere there. Was it a year or two ago with Northwestern? I think it was Northwestern, and I forget what Big Ten opponent they had, but the fans in Europe clearly got up for that one. I think this should be a really interesting one. It's a noon kickoff, so we can all kind of get into game form. The rest of week 0 isn't that exciting. SMU, as we mentioned before, will be playing against Nevada, but it's actually a little taste. And then week 1 is pretty loaded this year.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Good stuff with the ranking of the FBS conferences. Good luck with what you're doing with Athlons, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Dan Lyons with us, Athlon Sports, on the ranking of the FBS. And, you mentioned the American. They have been picked apart like vultures, and yet they also then turn around, and that's what's like anything else, the transfer portal. You lose 5 players, somebody picks them up, somebody else. It's just a constant, like the circle of life.
Yeah, they were in a better position also because of their media contract to turn around and go get other teams. Like that's where I kind of thought that maybe we would see a merger between 2 leagues to try to ward this off, and we still might eventually because they might have to, or we talked last week about the potential for their own playoff, but they've done nice work. Mike Oresco did good work in making sure that his conference didn't completely crater, and it went almost in the opposite direction because we had reports of like, the AAC is just waiting for the Big 12 to fall into it so that ESPN can give them $9 million a year and call it a day to, hey, whoa, don't leave for the AAC. But they did a good job, and now they're moving on.
That ended when Bob Bowlesby sent a cease and desist, right?
Yeah.
That ended that because that was there. I remember that when that first popped up on the radar. All right, around the corner, still much more to get to. We have Brett McMurphy just after 5 o'clock today. JJ Joe, Baylor Radio, on the DeQuan Finn decision a couple of days ago. Paul, top 5. He's going to leave at about 5 o'clock today. Craig and I will take it the last hour, as good relief pitchers will do. With Emery Winter in our studio, working on 365 Sports. Garrett Ross runs the mothership, back after a couple of days. And Jack McKenzie, of course, always here in every way possible. This is 365 Sports. I just received this from Alan Samuels and Ted Teague, the CEO and general manager of the dealership, Alan Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat in Waco. If you look for a high-performance vehicle, 700-plus horsepower, 2022 Dodge Charger Hellcat wide body, loaded up with 4,000 miles, for $75,825, the Cream Puff is one of the sexiest, sleek cars you will ever lay your hands on or eyes on. It is smoking hot. The 2024 Dodge Durango Hellcat with 710 horsepower, save $8,500. And then also Ram has what they have with performance. Alan Samuels has the TRX 1500 crew cab, both new and used, available for immediate delivery. The used one is a 2022 Ram TRX 1500 TRX with 12,000 miles for $83,985. And if you want something new, 2024 Ram TRX that's built to go anywhere, anytime, day or night. Alan Samuels has over 450 new or used or pre-owned cars and SUVs available on their lot to serve you in the community at Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Get ready, Baylor fans. The ultimate game weekend experience awaits you at the Baylor Club. Kick off your weekend with our Friday Night Live pep rally. With live entertainment and special appearances from the Baylor Spirit Squad, it's the perfect way to start your game weekend with a roar. On Saturdays, don't miss our Knox Hall tailgate. Enjoy delicious food, ice-cold drinks, and great company as you gear up for the big game. And after the weekend's excitement, wrap it all up with our famous Bear brunches on Sundays. Don't wait. Make your game weekends legendary with the Baylor Club membership today.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
All right, we continue this 4 o'clock hour. Paul is out for the 5 o'clock hour. Just slipped out the door, working on a lot of production when it comes to commercials, billboards, liners, and more for our upcoming football season, officially this week, but also many things we have for next week. Here is from, it's a good little follow, a group of 5 guys. He put this out there today. Here's a list of the 11 college football. Here's a list of 11 college football playoff scores. Only one of these scores is brought up when discussing why another 70 programs don't deserve a shot. Now, the group of 5, of course, highest ranked conference champion is in this year, at least for the next couple of years. And you look at the scores, these are all blowouts, including Georgia beating TCU, Oregon thumped Florida State, Alabama shut out Michigan State, LSU over Oklahoma, and on and on and on. Every one of those games pretty much blowouts. Ohio State 42, Oregon 20. Then you have Alabama 27, Cincinnati 6. And I got to be honest with you, I remember that game, but for some reason I was like, damn, it all depends on how you look at a game. 27-6, is there any difference between 27-6 and 41-20? Does 41-20 look a little bit closer or whatever the score is? And then that year that Cincinnati lost to Alabama, this is, of course, a group of 5 qualification in Cincinnati with Luke Fickell and company. Alabama that year beat Notre Dame by 17, Ohio State by 28, Miami by 31, Ole Miss by 21, Mississippi State by 40, Tennessee by 28, Georgia by 17, and then Cincinnati by 21. But that's the game that people would point to because of, well, they're not allowed to be a part of it. Look what happened, 27-6.
No, I disagree. I don't think that's the game people point to. I think people point to TCU as the reason why any non-SEC Big Ten, which I don't know why the Big Ten's getting the benefit of the doubt. They just seem to just get that just because they exist and have existed longer than most other people. It's not actually based on, like, the current, like, I know Michigan's the reigning national champion, but, like, we just started lumping in the Big Ten because the SEC won, like, 20 titles in 25 years, and they just got that nod because they're the Big Ten. You know, prior to Michigan winning the national title, they were getting that rub as basically being the same thing, which I never understood that. But the game, I don't ever hear people bring up Alabama, Cincinnati. Honestly, I guess it just maybe isn't reading enough Cincinnati stuff, but I feel like that just kind of came and went with a whimper. And Cincinnati probably didn't get enough credit for, playing a relatively close game, on the scoreboard when all was said and done. Certainly could have been a lot worse, or was portrayed maybe a lot worse than it actually was. But I think that TCU blowout against Georgia is the one that everybody uses at this point to try and say why this group of teams don't belong, and they just completely ignore the fact that same team beat Michigan in the game prior to that, which I have a problem with that. I think that's the narrative. I think that's disingenuous, and I really question the people who just hop over to the fact that you beat Michigan and pretend like, oh, well, they got beat by Georgia. Who was going to go beat Georgia? Let me guess. You think it was an SEC team? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And so the odds are that just about any team that was going to play Georgia was going to get beat up pretty good. And I don't like that. I don't like of just the twisting of results and the flat out ignoring of others to try and spin your narrative. And that's really bothered me with that TCU-Michigan game, the TCU-Georgia follow-up in particular. So, yeah, I don't really feel like there's too much blowback for Cincinnati, but it did reinforce of, like, they only scored 6 points against this team. You know, what do you expect? But to your point, Oklahoma's gotten their head kicked in the college football playoff. But nobody's going to say, well, they don't deserve it because they could never play Joe Burrow and LSU close. I don't remember hearing that at all in the lead up to it, and then they get beat by nearly 40 points, you know. So just eliminating schools based on their history and their name and their conference affiliation because you think they're going to get blown out. What the sport are we playing here? College football is the only one where the people who don't play the game are trying to determine who the champion is. And now it's different because you have the playoff, but for the longest time that's what it was in some cases because you only had the one game. So, they play in this conference. There's no way that they could contend with this team and it was all just speculative. And so that's why I'm thankful for the playoff is because, hey, the SEC might win the next 10 in a row, but I'll know they earned it. And I won't have to sit there and go, well, what if Texas Tech would have gotten in the playoff that year? What if Oklahoma State, the Brandon Weeden, had a chance to go into the playoff, but they didn't get a chance?
Right.
They got snubbed for guess who? Alabama, who was not that great that year in terms of their resume. So, yeah, there's a lot of bias when it comes to that, and that's something that this 12-team playoff, I think, will – not necessarily change the overall outcome, but I do think it'll change some of the narratives. And most importantly, it'll just give teams the chance. So, like, that's all anybody's asking for. That's all Oklahoma State wanted. Give us a chance to play for it. If we don't win it, that's fine. But don't not give us the chance.
No.
And so that's the thing that's getting eliminated that I am very thankful for. No more of those, well, if so-and-so would have just had that opportunity, well, now we'll get to see it up close and personal.
Yeah, and then, of course, there'll be arguments about who should be in the top 12. But those arguments, just like in the NCAA tournament, I mean, there's 68 teams or whatever that get in. So there we are with that. TCU getting blown out, but everyone forgets they beat Michigan in the semifinal game. When we come back, Brett McMurphy, we'll talk with him about this and more. And a lot of college football. This is 365 Sports. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace, just on the southern part of Waco off I-35. It's a phenomenal business. When you go to buy something, whether I had Alan Samuels on earlier as far as what they have available, or you go to a restaurant, well, you want two things. You want high quality, and then you also want a fair price. Now, there are certain things that you want to buy that are going to cost more. It depends on what you want, how high you will go. Well, what I love about Ideal MRI and what Rob Maxey, Dr. Maxey, and his partners have put together is you're going to get absolutely phenomenal state-of-the-art imaging from their MRI machine, and you're also not going to have to pay much. In fact, a lot lower than the average MRI price, which is $1,100 and rising. $497 is what you pay at Ideal MRI, and sometimes it could be less. They will help you, of course, set up the appointment. Your doctor must contact them that they want an MRI. You then will get contacted by Ideal MRI, set up an appointment, get there, and the people from the time you walk through the front door to the Texan specialist are absolutely just really good, great at what they do. State-of-the-art imaging to find out what hurts you so much, a ligament, a muscle, or something else, and $497 or less every single time. And the average is $1,100 or more. IdealMRI.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Midway Athletics and UBO Business Services are two names that exude winning. From Midway's top Central Texas Star test scores to college-like extracurricular facilities and UBO Business Services industry-leading customer service scores, you can trust in these two winning programs. Best of luck to Coach Joe Gillespie and the Midway Panthers. And look at your sticker on your office equipment. If it does not say UBO, call Midway Class of 2020, Duff, Daxon, Dane, or Sean Hunt at 254-70 809-2101 or ubeo.com.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely. And I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Busch Light, the sound of refreshment. The coldest and smoothest light lager there is. Find Busch Light near you.
Brett McMurphy, Action Network HQ, joins us. A great friend of the family of 365 Sports, Craig Smoak, David Smoak. Here we are. Brett, thank you very much. I know it's been a few days, but your nuggets in breaking down the trends of the past and what happens with teams ranked wherever they're ranked in the AP is just phenomenal. Is that something you update each year and then you kind of add to it as the top 25 is released?
Yeah, some of that is. I mean, when you've been doing it as long as I do, as long as I jot stuff down and you just go back and revisit it, sometimes some stuff is relevant one year, next year it's not. And look, just because it's happened in the past doesn't mean it's going to happen again. But there's some things I think you can, look at and, learn from and maybe not make that mistake if you're making predictions or actually, trying to make a little money on the side. But, like something simple like the preseason number one AP ranked team has not won the national title in 18 or 19 of the past 20 or 21 years. And Georgia didn't do it last year. They're number one again. Can they do it? Absolutely. History says they're not going to do it. So it's a lot of things like that, that kind of stick out to me. Another one that seems to come in every year is, everyone gets all, jacked up over the AP preseason top 25 poll. I understand why. But you look at that top 10, and history says at least one of those teams in the top 10 are going to finish out of the top 25. That's happened 19 of the last 20 years. So it's fun to kind of put that stuff out, and then people kind of have their take on who that team's going to be or who is currently unranked that will climb into the top 25. That's happened 18 of the last 19 years.
Brett, you put out your playoff projections a couple of days ago. Texas State, I think, was the one that's probably the most unique choice that is just different from, kind of seeing various others that are out there. What kind of went into just your thoughts on the Bobcats in particular with G.J. Kinney, but also what's that like, this exercise of putting together a 12-team playoff bracket for the first time? I know you've done it other times probably this offseason, but just in general ahead of a season.
You guys agreed with every single pick, right?
Every single one of them.
I was amazed. I thought that was my picks, and you just copied my paper. Yeah.
Well, you kept texting me your picks. I figured I'd go ahead and use them. Look, I could have sat there and took my preseason top 25 poll and put the top 11 teams in and thrown a group 5 team in there and said, here you go. Here is the obvious way to do it. But you know what? Again, talking about history, you look at the past years, again, if we would have had a playoff, we didn't have a playoff, that there's a number of times that unranked teams would have been in the playoffs and unranked teams to start the year. Teams that were not picked to win their conference would have been in the playoffs. And so I kind of tried to, take that and kind of mix it in with some that I think are, certified blocks to get in the playoff. The usual suspects: Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon. I think Alabama's in a good position. I actually didn't have Texas in my playoff. I think there's a big jump going from the Big 12 to the SEC. Obviously, they lose their starting running back. They've lost a backup running back. I think it's just the accumulation of all that stuff. But no, Texas State was, a sleeper. I know most people have Boise State. It's not that I don't like Boise State. I don't like their schedule. They only have 7 conference games. They have 5 non-conference games, including Oregon State, Washington State, Oregon. Now, the good news is you win those games, you're a lock to get in. Mm-hmm. You lose some of those games, and now it's okay. Now you start playing the game of, well, how many losses are too many losses? I just like what, Texas State's been doing. Their offense is off the charts. Don't want to bring up bad memories, but you remember last year's season opener. And, they basically have Arizona State, who I think is a Big 12 team that they can win. Somehow they've got that game at home. UTSA will be a tough matchup, but I think 11-1 conference championship Texas State will be in contention to get into the playoff as a Group 5 team. Probably the biggest challenge for them, if again you got to win the conference, is if Boise State gets through their schedule with 10 wins. That'll be hard to knock them out, or somebody rolling out 10 wins from the American. Memphis, the most likely candidate, but yeah, I like their chances. I really do. And look, I don't know about you guys, but I know it's 12 and we've only had 4 before, but I want to see some new blood. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Probably majority of people never heard of Texas State. No offense to Texas State. We love the Bobcats, but kind of like the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, you get that breath of fresh air with what are considered the Cinderella, even though if they have a pretty good run, there's certain Cinderellas that have a little bit of meat to their bones. When you were just mentioning Texas State, and yes, we saw that game, and I've known G.J. Kinney since he was a high school quarterback in Canton, Texas. It's just the fact you can bring them up. And it's not like a miracle type year that they have to get in, at least for the next couple of years. That's what, to me, makes this so exciting.
Yeah, I mean, what's good, it'll, not that you guys need stuff to talk about because you guys are locked in and do a great job, but I mean, think of all the content you're going to have when we get into the end of October, the 1st of November, and there literally will be 30, maybe 40 teams with legitimate shots to get into the playoff. And if we thought the TV ratings were impressive in past years, I think this year will be a record, because now you're more than ever before, you're going to have Texas State fans tuning in to some net game on Tuesday night, rooting that the favorite in that league loses to drop them down the pecking order. Or you're going to have somebody tuning in to see what's going on in the Memphis USF game, that has no affiliation with that schools, because you're hoping those guys lose to help your profile or your resume. So that's going to be fascinating. And yeah, we'll have, it'll be intense. It's college football, 1, and 2, it's no longer Major League Baseball. It's no longer after the first week of the season you've been eliminated and there's 160 games to go and you can't make the playoffs. This is different. You can lose a couple times. You still got a real shot to get in. And I think that'll be huge, and I think fans will gravitate to that, and I think the TV ratings will increase because of that also.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see how all this starts to unfold beginning, I guess technically this weekend, but especially next week. I saw you made the comment, because we talked about this story earlier, the bettor who put $10,000 on Colorado to win the Big 12, and you had a funny comment about that. I guess if you got $10,000 to just burn and you're not going to be affected by it, that's not a bad bet to make because of what you can make off of it. But what do you think of just Colorado in general this year, Brett, and what are your expectations for what you think we'll see with Dion in year number 2 and the changes they've made?
Well, I do have one regret about that tweet. So okay. I wasn't going to delete it, but the better bets 10 grand. He gets 250,000.
Yep.
So I said would win 250,000, and then I said will win $0.
Right.
It's a brain cramp. I should have said, instead of will win $0, I should have said will lose $10,000.
There you go.
I want to apologize to the entire Twitter community for that faux pas. And by the way, you know what this is called, right? This is called money laundering. All right, money laundering 2024. Look, Colorado gets a lot of pub. You guys, I saw you guys in Vegas. I don't think they have the quality depth yet. Obviously Sanders at quarterback's a stud. Travis Hunter, he was on our Action Network All-America team at corner. They have a couple of, incredible skill players. If they can't block anybody, it doesn't matter. And we saw that last year. Shadir Sanders got beaten up game after game after game. I think the schedule's tough. I think coming into the Big 12, you guys talk to these coaches like I do privately. If you ask them what team do you want to beat more than anyone else, I'd say the majority of them would say Colorado. And that's for whatever reason. I don't know why, but that's in large part because of Deion Sanders. And so I think you're getting everybody's A game. You're in a new conference. That's going to be difficult. I don't see them getting to just 6 wins, much less winning a conference championship. I think they fall just short of getting to a bowl game.
Brad, I saw your response to Circus Sports. They put out the Heisman Trophy, at least the odds, and that 5 of the 8 listed are transfers. And yet then I saw your note that 5 of the last 7 were transfer quarterbacks. That seemed like that trend probably goes to 6 of the last 8 based on what I see and what you put.
Yeah, I really don't have a good read on who's going to win the Heisman. I never have, and I've kind of just basically determined when people ask who I think is going to win the Heisman, I tell them I honestly have no clue. The thing, and I'm a Heisman voter, and this is not me personally, but just from the Heisman voting group, it appears that there's a few things that are very important. 1, you better be a quarterback. 2, you better be on a team that's highly ranked that has a chance to get to the playoff. 3, it certainly helps to play on conference championship weekend. And 4, you need a good storyline, or you need a good, I know the cliche Heisman moment. You need a good, you need to make a good, feel-good story for everybody. I actually think, Dylan Gabriel is the favorite right now. I think it's a disadvantage to be the favorite. I really do, because I think everybody, instead of praising these guys, will nitpick what they do wrong. And instead of talking about the 4 touchdowns, they're going to criticize the 1 interception. You have to go all the way back to 2014 for the last preseason favorite to win the Heisman. Ironically, that was Marcus Mariota of Oregon. Does another Oregon quarterback go wire to wire? We'll have to see. But I just think now with social media and everything, when you are the favorite, you guys know this. All everyone wants to do is knock you down, knock you off your pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the last few guys that have – Joe Burrow came out of nowhere to win this thing. Daniels came out of nowhere. Obviously, he doesn't fit the profile of being on a playoff team or whatever. And the only way to beat that is to put up just incredible numbers that you can overcome this stuff. And a lot of people, it seems to me a lot has changed in that. I think 5-10 years ago, you get into the stats. Well, this guy's got 3,000 yards passing, 4,000 yards passing, 1,500 yards rushing, whatever it is. Now these stats are insane. They're crazy. And no one knows what was Daniel's stats last year. I have no clue. But he won. Because what he did, what he meant to LSU. So, yeah, sorry, you guys are looking for a Heisman pick. I don't got one. I just would not take any of the top 5 or 6 favorites. Find somebody further down that you think has a shot to get to the playoff, and you'll have as good a chance as, picking a name out of a hat.
I am a Heisman voter, and I have no idea. And I when I think I know, then all of a sudden,
Well, you shouldn't because they haven't played in the games yet, so you shouldn't have an idea of who's going to win. Yeah,
you meant no, exactly, and I really don't, because it could be whoever's like 23rd right now. The top 18 bet picks are all quarterbacks, and then Travis Hunter, who's such a unique player, is 19, and then everything else for the next 8 or 10 picks are also quarterbacks. Brett, I just saw where you and I know the SEC released their tie-breaking rules. And at the very bottom of the tie-breaking rules, unless I misread that, it's a random draw out of someone's, hat.
Yeah.
It's
a random draw. I don't know if it's necessarily a hat. It could be, it could be ping pong balls or something. But, yeah. Look, I don't think they're going to get to that. It's funny, though, because, look, the Big 12's got to do it, too. It's either draw names out of a hat or flip a coin, unless they want to go rock, paper, scissors. I'm rooting for that, but the SEC has a very complicated, and if any of your listeners can figure it out, please email me, because I read it and I don't understand it. But there is a winning margin metric in there that I won't even try to explain. It's not simply a winning margin. It's based on your average points allowed, scored and allowed, and then the number of points you score, and then based on if you would score 100% of those points. I can't understand it. I went to Oklahoma State, as you guys know. I can't understand it. So I don't think they're going to get past that metric to get to the random drawing the names out of a hat, but I wish they would, because it reminds me of when I worked in Odessa, Texas, covering high schools, where you would have those tiebreakers, and the coaches would drive to the convenience store halfway between, and the local TV reporters there filming it, and they throw quarters against the wall, or 3 teams, 2 heads and 1 tails. Those are the good old days. But yeah. Look, the Big Ten's got to do the same thing. Everybody's going to come up with it. And, it's going to be fascinating to look at the final tiebreaker for all these conferences, because that's got what it's got to be. Draw names out of a hat or flip a coin.
After last year, do we know that the Big 12 has, figured out what they have as far as tie-breaking procedures? I feel like maybe that kind of got lost in just all the other offseason talk, but that was a big talking point at the end of last year, obviously. Has that been sorted out? Do you even know?
I don't think it has, and I don't know if they're going to change it, or if I'm sure they're going to tweak it, because you're adding 4 teams and not everybody. I mean, everyone didn't play everybody when you had, 4 teams. So certainly everyone's not going to play everybody when you have 16. So yeah, I'm sure they'll tweak it a little bit. Me personally, whatever benefits Oklahoma State, I'm all for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of which, by the way, what were your thoughts about the barcode in the back of the helmet?
So the immediate Twitter reaction is, how are you going to scan that from up in the stand? Okay, it's going to be on the Jumbotron. 2, it's going to be on every, hundreds of spots around the stadium. It'll be on websites. It'll be all over the place. Look, we're talking about it. That's half the battle in college football, is to be relevant, to be talked about, and Colorado to deliver. So that's part of I think Oklahoma State accomplished that. I mean, look, we're beyond the point of amateurism and all that stuff. So if you can generate more money, that's great. I did see a couple of funny responses. Like, people were like, they are not fans of Oklahoma State, and they remarked that if they're at the game and like a cornerback gives up a TD to their team, that they may shoot the cornerback that got burned a few bucks for giving up the winning score. So I mean, look, it's great, and I think you'll see other people do this. UCF put it on their jerseys for their spring game a couple of years ago, which obviously is a lot bigger. Hey, this is the reality we're in. There's one thing that every college athletic department is doing as we speak, and that is trying to figure out how to generate more money. So I see this, as another step along the path.
And Brett, as always, thank you for being a part of the show. Always love the segment. Watch your feed and all the stuff you write for Action Network HQ. Thanks for your time, buddy. Appreciate it.
All right. Stop texting me all your playoff picks, okay?
I will. He is one of the ultimate, and the ultimate insider when it comes to college football. Action Network HQ, Brett _McMurphy on Twitter. So the last tiebreaker in the SEC, after all these head-to-head common opponents, whatever, you just know random draw of the tied teams. So let's say it's Georgia, Alabama, LSU, and let's say Texas in this foursome, but Mississippi State or maybe South Carolina somehow had their magical years, and they go to draw the random tied teams. You know that all those other schools will have like 20 ping pong balls, in Mississippi State and South Carolina will have one.
I don't know that, but yeah, you would probably convince a lot of people that that's the case, not have a hard time doing that because there is that perception out there. But I don't think you really have to worry too much about it getting all the way down to the F tier of the tiebreaker. And if you do, you just have to chalk that up to being a 1 in a million shot that it actually landed that way. The Big 12, that's interesting to, and I'm sure now maybe Brett will dig into that a little bit of like, have they figured out after last year like what the tiebreaker is? Because that was pretty messy a year ago. Like that was almost to the point of like, hey, you guys are like bending, like it wasn't almost, they bent the rules. Like they set themselves up for kind of a disastrous situation.
Which is what their background is. That's what they, one true conference, and then the next week A&M's gone, or there's whatever, and then TCU and Baylor have their cluster blank of controversy.
Yeah, I think you're confusing some of those. Yeah, it was the one true champion, and then you had the Baylor TCU thing. Not A&M, but I don't know. I just that's something that I haven't thought about really since the end of last year, and now we're getting around to it, and because of the SEC tiebreaker, it's like, well, oh shoot, has your marketing company revisited that and made it a little clearer on what the protocol is now that there's another 2 additional teams that are in the league, and what does that look like? And I'm sure it would probably, or does look something similar to the SEC's tiebreaker where, yeah, I mean, if you get past head-to-head and record versus common opponents and record against where certain teams are placed and cumulative percentage, and then you get to total scoring margin versus conference. If you get all the way through that and then you're still tied, I mean, yeah, you might as well draw a name out of a hat. What the hell else are you going to do? You've done like 6 different, 6 different statistical categories to try and separate the two. And if they're still gridlocked after all of that, and they've got that same amount of, common scoring margin versus best opponents and whatever other category, then yeah, I mean, shoot, just to save everybody the time and the stress, go ahead and pull it out of a hat. I mean, it's step 6, 7, not step 1 or 2. So I think that's kind of fun and kind of funny. And yeah, I think at that point, just lean into it and do like Brett was suggesting of like Texas high school football. He brought up doing a local convenience store and throwing quarters against the wall. But I know Whataburger has seen thousands of playoff
Dairy
games
Queen.
Decided. Dairy Queen, same thing. Like that's the go-to places for those types of decisions. And yeah, state championships have been decided by the flick of a quarter in a Whataburger in like Lindale. So yeah, at some point you just got to make a decision. And if it gets to that for the SEC, yeah, you might as well just draw whatever, we say out of a hat, it says random draw, but yeah, do whatever.
I knew a coach.
Televise that. Like go get freaking, gosh, now I'm blanking on Brent Venables and get Hugh Freeze and meet halfway at a gas station like Arkansas or something and flip a quarter on ESPN. Hell, I'd watch that. I'd watch that before I'd watch the playoff show for the first few weeks. I'd be way more interested in that than the playoff show.
Do you know the flip of the coin at Dairy Queen or Whataburger late at night, the 2 schools from like, let's say, Lufkin and South Lake Carroll. But do you know what they started to do? They started, and Mike Owens told me this, former coach at Legacy Lee at the time, a state championship coach, and he had an unbelievable, I think he kind of helped the system. They would take the high school coaches directory, and for example, Garrett, you're Sherman, Texas, you're Sherman High School, and let's say I'm Temple, and one of the 2 coaches would go, okay, so I'm Temple, and I have the coach's directory. And you know what he would do? They would say, name, even or odd, the zip code of this school. So he would put up, let's say, Cal Allen.
Yeah.
And you would have to say odd or even. And if it was odd and it was even, then, but that's the way it started
Just
to
flip
go.
a coin. That's a little bit.
The problem with flipping a coin is you didn't have to go anywhere. The problem with, or the best part about using the directory, you didn't have to go anywhere. You could do that on the phone.
That's
and for
creative.
some reason, Mike was able to, I don't know how he did this, but they didn't lose for a long time. And during a stretch where everyone, like, hey, let's just meet at Texas Stadium. But he had a system, and God bless him because he's battling stuff right now. But he won like 10 consecutive flips based on the directory. That's what they had, that orange coaches directory, whatever it was back in the day. All right, when we come back, J.J. Joe, former Baylor quarterback and Baylor radio analyst on the DeQuan Finn decision and more. And this is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for all of your automotive needs. Looking to get into a brand new vehicle, they can take care of that for you. Looking to get into a pre-owned vehicle, they can definitely hook you up there. Looking to just get your vehicle worked on, they can certainly take care of that as well. And they're fired up because it's time for football and also time for big savings on cars and trucks over at the Richard Carr Kickoff to Savings event. Check out the multi-pro tailgate, the first-class interior and power to get any job done when you climb into the GMC Sierra, which is the truck for Texans who want to drive the best. And since we have an audience outside of Texas for non-Texans that want to drive the best as well, right now you can save nearly $10,000, $9,000 to be exact, in all 2024 GMC Sierra SLT trucks in stock with a 2010 or newer trade-in. For qualified buyers, you can find Sierra truck options on the lot under $40,000. So check out that tailgate and the interior and the power and all the bells and whistles that come with the GMC Sierra, in particular that SLT model. Again, big savings in stock with a 2010 or newer trade-in for qualified buyers. If you're in the market for a pre-owned car or truck, they want to show you the value on the lot. They want to show you the confidence they have in getting you into the right vehicle. They are loaded with over 100 highly inspected used cars and trucks, priced to move. And remember, as always, their goal is 100% credit approval. So it's time for football. It's time for savings at the Kickoff to Savings event at Richard Carr Motors. Check them out online. Check them out in person. Swing on by the dealership. But just check them out in general and get yourself into a new or pre-owned but state-of-the-art and safe car, truck, or SUV for this upcoming football season. RichardCarMotors.com.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Is your car ready for a makeover? Get ready to fall in love with your ride again at City Tire and Battery. City Tire and Battery is family owned and has provided expert service with top quality products since 1942. And with financing available, there's no reason to put off those much needed upgrades. Give your car the love it deserves and go see City Tire and Battery, located at 1502 South Valley Mills in Waco.
When we moved to Texas, we were like fish out of water. We didn't know anyone in our neighborhood until our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent came to the house. She was so helpful and reassuring, a friendly face with that Texan hospitality I'd heard about. When we purchased a Texas Farm Bureau insurance policy, we knew we were making the right choice. We knew our family would be protected.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones and financial advisor Cam Heathcott. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go, 365 Sports. All the decisions, it seemed like, pretty much, not all, but a lot of them, quarterback, QB1 decisions made. Most of them not a surprise by any means. Baylor's was not. DeQuan Finn named the starter earlier this week. J.J. Joe, Baylor radio color analyst and former Baylor quarterback, joins us on 365 Sports. J.J., I wasn't surprised. I don't think anybody would have been surprised unless it would have been Sawyer. And we haven't been able to watch much. I'm not sure if you got to watch any of the scrimmages, but just your thoughts about that decision. It took a long, long time. Do you think it was that close of a competition?
Hi, guys. It's almost season. It's almost time of the season, so I'm glad to be on with you. But I really do. I think that we all believed DeQuan was going to be the guy. You know, it's hard to teach, you know, being in the fire. DeQuan over at Toledo has been in the MAC championship game. He's played well, performed well, and it's hard to get that experience. And when you have someone that has that type of experience on campus, typically you're going to give him a chance to prove that he can't do it once he's done it. Now, Sawyer, I've heard good things. I haven't been down as much, but I've heard great things on Sawyer. And I expected it because once you get that first taste of, I guess you can say, playing time under your belt, typically you do make a leap. Typically you make a leap that next year because, first of all, you don't want to go back to the bench. But the second thing is that now you understand a little bit more about the speed of the game and what's required. So I think DeQuan's the right decision, but I think they'll both will play.
JJ, I know we've talked to you a couple times since the season ended, and we've probably discussed this, but now as we draw closer, you strike me as somebody pretty excited about the change in offensive scheme. Would I be correct in saying that?
Man, you would be 100% correct, right? Don't get me wrong, I really like what Grimes did. I think it really fit, especially what he was doing at BYU. I think BYU recruits a little different than Baylor. In Utah, you have some talent, but I think we would all go on record to say that, the talent here in Texas is a little bit more deep and a little different than in Utah. In Texas, if you're not going to recruit speed, if you're not going to recruit receivers and corners, as well as quarterbacks, because quarterbacks, I'm not saying they grow on trees here, but here in Texas, we train them from about the 5th grade. You start, I think, to struggle, and I think we started to struggle because there's so much talent in this state, especially on the edge, man. You got to recruit it, and you got to be able to attract them at a high rate.
JJ, you could run, and kind of listening to some feedback that I had about DeQuan Finn is that, yes, he can take off, and when he does, he can be absolutely dangerous. But that he does have at least the instinct of not immediately, once his first option is covered or not there, of just running, that he will wait a little bit longer and then take off. How hard is that for someone that can run?
It's really tough. I was never as fast as this young man. I've seen his highlights. I saw him against Ohio State. I saw him in different games, and this young man can go. And, it is tempting when you have talent like that. You've probably grown up being one of the fastest kids on the field, and sometimes you'll probably overuse it. I did like the fact that, he completed passes at a pretty decent, I think it was like 62, something like that percent last year, pretty close to it. But he did use his legs quite a bit. So I think it makes it really tough on defenses because the first thing you say is, you know what, we don't want him to run. The one thing we don't want to do is want him to run. So I think as long as DeQuan can figure out the rhythm in this offense, how to make sure he's completing passes and threatening the defenses on that back end enough, I think you have a special year with both his feet and his arm. But I know it's tempting not to run more often than not.
What is your concern level with the offensive line? And I think that's the biggest thing for everybody who's following the program. And how does that play into what maybe we do see from DeQuan Finn or how he makes decisions?
Yeah, I think that was a big part in it. I know that, I've heard a lot of good things. And a lot of guys, we've got some transfers in. I think we got 4 new, upperclassmen guys that have been recruited through the portal. And I think this line will look a lot different. And I believe the scheme will help this line. I think spreading people out, making things simpler for the quarterback to see, not having to, really control linemen. And not that the wide zone required you to dominate a guy. But I think in this offense, you can use some of those backs with the speed to really threaten those defensive linemen and really hold them just a little bit, because you got a quarterback that can run and you got a running back that can, that has good speed. So the line is going to be essential, because eventually that group is going to dictate how many games, at least how well you play on offense. And if coach wants to get back to bowl eligibility and even 8, 7, 8, 9 potential wins, this offensive line will have had a good year if that happens.
This segment with J.J. Joe, brought to you by Richard Carr Motors, Baylor Bear Hotline, and also brought to you by Alliance Bank. On the segments with J.J. and also Ricky Thompson. J.J., with the fact that DeQuan Finn can run, and the fact that he doesn't just immediately take off, although that might happen if it's a called run, how does that affect the secondary? And does that open up the possibility of more one-on-one matchups because they have to worry about him?
Well, I think if I'm a defensive coordinator, what I would do is I would play a little bit more zone, because you want to keep eyes on. I mean, you don't want guys chasing guys across formation and downfield, and all of a sudden you have this dynamic playmaker that's running the ball. So I think initially maybe you see a little bit more zone, and of course they'll heat him up to see if he can process and handle the blitzes in the right manner. But I think you play a little bit more zone, which also ought to give him an opportunity to find holes in the zone. You have 4 wides. And the one thing DeQuan can't do, I mean, he's a really good runner, but I don't think he's thrown for 3,000 yards in a season. I think he had 2,700 maybe. He needs to throw for 3,000. If this offense is going to be what it needs to be with those receivers, Keytron back, Howell, all those guys, you have the speed. We have Ashton Hawkins. You have Monterey Baldwin. You don't want those guys mad at you. They love to see you run, but they want to catch the ball in this offense, and you got to use that bevy of receivers. And I think if he's going to throw for 3,000, it needs to happen this year. And I think if he does throw for 3,000, we're blocking well, our running game is working, and those receivers are happy.
How intrigued are you by Dave Aranda, defensive coordinator / head coach?
Say, man, hey, I am very intrigued. And I'm excited, to be honest with you, because I think Dave Aranda, I think he's the kind of guy, like, he wanted the previous, defensive coordinators to own it. He didn't want to be in their business, for lack of a better term. But I think this will help him get, not that he wasn't into the game, but I think Coach Aranda, because he is a laid back guy, really needs something to focus on. And I think sometimes that brings the energy. And I'll tell you, I mean, you don't have to have a head coach that's banging his head off the wall. I mean, you don't need that. Coaches have different styles. But I think he's so laid back and, let's say, understated. He needs to find ways to get him amped up. And when your defense is making mistakes or even playing well, it's hard not to get amped up.
What was your initial reaction when you heard Gary Patterson had left and was no longer really a part of it? And then, like, just a few days later, he showed up at practice one day.
Well, I thought it was – I just figured it was one of those situations where, I mean, like, it had run its course much quicker than all of us expected. And maybe Gary had one understanding of what his role was going to be and Coach had another, but it was really odd. I kind of hated it, to be honest with you. As much as I didn't really like Gary that much, I always thought he's a great coach. Because I thought, one thing you can say about that guy is he knows defenses. He knows how to game plan games. Regardless of the 61-58. Okay, we know he was the coach then, but he knows how to game plan games, and he can help you. And I think him on the staff in whatever role, he'll be a great addition.
I know they've just started opening it up, JJ, but have you had a chance to check out the new facilities at all?
Man, I have not. I've just kind of seen some of the video. I try to keep my distance a little bit, and now, it's kind of hard because I think everything changes so much. New facility, the players, we have portal stuff, so a lot of new players. So I'm looking forward to it, but hadn't had a chance to see it.
Well, I saw a video. Craig, you've been over to practices a lot more than I have, but I saw the video, and it is state of the art the way you would think with all the amenities you would expect.
Hey, one thing I'll say about the young men now. Hey, look, they get paid. You got the best facilities. Now you got to go do work. I think I'm really hoping what we see from all this is that that the young men who are there, who are having all this benefit, that they appreciate and they play at a level, man, that's expected of them, and that we all want to see. So I'm happy for all the coaches, the players, but I'm more excited to see what product they put out on that field, man, a week from Saturday.
Most definitely. JJ, what in line with that, what did you think of the "we're paying players" viral Aranda quote? I mean, he was just being blunt, and there was nothing, off about it. I think just the bluntness of it is what shocked people mostly, but they've got a really good run going on in recruiting. I just wonder what you make of that, and I think maybe sometimes people don't understand, even for a small school, Baylor can find a pretty big amount of support when they need to.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of different, man, because I think Elliot Coffey, of course, who played there and does some work, he posted the picture, and I saw it, and I said, hey, I tweeted, I said, hey, he put it on the shirt. They put it on the shirt. Yeah. So I was kind of like, well, I guess, hey, that's what's happening. So why not? And I'm not surprised at Aranda. If you've heard Aranda over the last 3, 4, 5 years, man, he's very blunt, just like matter of fact.
Yeah.
And what it told me too, Smoak, is that he's now accepted where we are. That sometimes a relationship you have to figure out how to make it relational, even if it also has some elements of a transactional type relationship. And I think he's figured that out.
Yeah, you weren't at Big 12 Media Days, but that's when we were interviewing him, and Craig asked him about the surge in recruiting, and he just blurted it out, and it was like it's like it was just so simple, and we all
right.
Craig then goes, that's it? And yeah, that's it. And it's really taken charge, and it turned into a hell of a deal with the T-shirts and a lot more.
It did. And like I said, I think he's embraced it. And Smoak, at the end of the day, the only way you get guys to play at a high level, it's not because all of a sudden they can go buy a car or they can go buy a new suit. It's going to be because they want to play for that coach and they want to play for that staff. And I think Aranda, he is who he is, he's not pretentious. He's matter of fact. He's being upfront. I think guys will love to play for him and play hard for him. And really, I think, let's put it this way. This is my last thing. We haven't heard him have to come out like Gundy came out 2 weeks ago, right? Mm-hmm. We haven't heard him have to come out what Gundy said. So that tells me that once you kind of get all the economics out the way, the guys still have to really like the coach, want to play for that guy, right? And they don't get caught up in all that other stuff. Of course, they don't always come up, but I like the way he handles it.
All right, JJ, if you were a group of 5 school, and there are some good ones, Memphis, Boise State, et cetera, Tulane just, a couple of years ago or so, and they beat USC, Texas State with G.J. Kinney or whoever, and you started the year, and you now know, at least for the next couple of years, that the highest-ranked conference champion among the group of 5 is going to make the playoffs. How much, other than just playing anyway, how much of an incentive will that be?
I think it's huge, Smoak. I mean, they expanded it. You have a spot, and of course, like most, like it's been over the last 5 years. They know they can't trip up. I mean, they have to go win all these games and be the highest ranked one. So I think it's a huge motivating factor. I love that we're at 12 teams, man. I really do. I don't think we need to go to 16. I like the buys, but I love being at 12. I love that in some sense it's inclusive in a sense, but I'll reserve judgment. I just don't want it to be the Big Ten SEC Invitational, by them taking up all the spots. But I like it. I think you expand it. and then you let the small schools, because you could tell me, hey, they won't win a natty, but you tell me what, if Texas State or if Boise or if Marshall or whoever, those teams, if they get in and beat somebody, you know how big that is for them in recruiting and raising more money. It's huge. So I'm happy to see it, and I hope access is maintained where we can keep teams like that into the playoff.
All right, I want to go back to one more thing about quarterback play.
Uh-huh.
The one thing I've heard about Sawyer is that if he starts off poorly, like a practice, and it's just not going well, that it's hard for him to kind of get out of that hole, where DeQuan has the ability to just basically by making plays can try to get himself out of just, let's say, having a bad day. How hard is that when you start poorly to try to get out of that? Or is that something that just should be pretty natural?
No, it's hard, Smoak. I've had plenty of those. Like you have sometimes some games, some practices where for some reason you're just a little off. It could be like going to the links. Sometimes you're not hitting it right. You can't correct it. And for a quarterback, that's huge. Now the big thing that you learn, and I think this is why DeQuan is starting, is because what you learn with reps. I love quarterbacks with reps. I think you don't go to the NFL until you've had 30 plus games under your belt, is that you learn that, okay, this is one of those games that I have to manage. I have to get there, and then I'll have an opportunity to make a play later on to help us win. And you're able to not press. I think DeQuan, because he has really nice feet, he can simplify the game at some point. If his accuracy is a little off one game, or if he's just not seeing it clearly, it looks a little muddy, he knows at the end of the day I have my feet. And I can go get 5 yards. I can go get 3 yards. I can get it to 3rd and 2 and keep the offense moving. And I think that helps him fight his way through those rough outings.
JJ, thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time. Have a great rest of the night, rest of the week. We'll see you next Saturday against Tarleton State. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. JJ Joe with his Baylor Radio on many things with the quarterback play and other issues, topics, etc., discussion in college football. When we come back, Paul Catalina and his top 5.
Fantasy Sports EVO, the next evolution of daily fantasy sports. Tired of traditional fantasy sports where you spend hours upon hours studying individual players? EVO's unique team-based platform makes it easier than ever for all sports fans to play. No need to know individual players. Just choose your contest, select your teams, and enjoy the game. Whether you access our website from a desktop, mobile device, or the app, the experience is the same. EVO is for all sports fans. Join Fantasy Sports EVO and experience the evolution.
For Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome to Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Remember, use promo code 365sports for 10% off your order. We continue on as we build the perfect college football team for 2024. Today, the defensive line. And let's start with the big uglies. The mutters in the middle. Howard Cross III from Notre Dame. Obviously, if you don't know anything about his father, Howard Cross, that would be the second or junior. He was an excellent NFL player for a very long time. And his son is a chip off the old block. Maybe more than a chip. Look how big this guy is. Also, where's a great number? This is my high school number 56. Just thought you'd like to know that about me. If you're ever at trivia night and they say, what was Paul Catalina, YouTube celebrity's high school football number? You'll be one of the ones who answers 56. And you'll also be the one at the lamest trivia night in America. But Howard Cross, Notre Dame. This guy, just a mauler in the trenches, run stuffer, can get after the passer, really disrupts things, collapses the pocket, all those buzzwords you hear about a defensive tackle. He is really what Marcus Freeman has built this Notre Dame team in the image of, is a guy like Howard Cross who's gritty and tough, and they lead through the defense on that squad. He is going to be a handful in 2024. Another handful, and a guy who's probably going to be a top 5 pick in the draft, Mason Graham from Michigan. If they did build a defensive tackle in the lab, this would be the guy. He does everything perfectly, collapses the pocket. He's a great run stuffer. And that's what you really want a defensive tackle to do. He is one of the best at it. You do not want to line up across from this guy. Will be a top pick in this upcoming NFL draft. He is that good. Best at his position in the country. If you look at every All-American list at defensive tackle, he is the guy who I think has the least amount of flux when it comes to first or second team. I think he's first team every preseason All-American list. Every one. Like some other people might, I had Howard Cross. Some of the people might have Deion Walker, who's at Kentucky. There's other people who move up and in there. Mason Graham on every single list. No matter what, he is. He'll be a preseason All-American. He'll likely be a postseason All-American. Next up, a pass rush specialist. I'm picking Patrick Payton from FSU. Maybe the only FSU guy who will be on this list. And he's not quite as a complete defensive end like the next two guys that you're going to see. But if you need a big play on a passing down, this guy is long, lean, fast. He'll get after it. And he was trained by this man right here, Jared Verse. This is his problem has also been he kind of gets a 15-yard penalty every now and again for getting too emotional. But if you want a guy who's just going to come off the edge and hit the quarterback with reckless abandon and speed, I mean, he's probably legit 4'6" and maybe a 4'5" in the 40 right now. And for a guy his size, that's amazing. So I would take Patrick Payton from FSU, who's just going to come off and rip quarterbacks' heads off all night long. Pure defensive ends. Stand-up position in that 3-4-ish defense that Tennessee runs. James Pierce, also going to be a very high pick. Gets better and better and better every year. Not necessarily built like your classic defensive end, but he's tall, he's very fast, and he gets after the quarterback. It still trips me out. I don't know if anybody else is this way, but you see defensive ends with like just the regular face mask and not like a big, gigantic one full of bars. But he's that fast and that good. You could pass him for a tight end or running back or something else. He is very, very good. Also a guy who's going to be picked very, very high in the 2025 draft. And finally, a guy that I love watching at Louisville, Ashton Gelati. Is it because his name's in an eval? Yes. But also is it because he's just kind of that old school stocky, I mean, look, 2 hands on the ground here, ready for the pass rush defensive end. He's going to knock people in the dirt, in the running game, in the pass game. Watch him hit a quarterback. It's like he experiences pure joy every time. Ashton Gelati, really, really good player. Also going to be a high draft pick, but someone who is very dependable no matter where you move around on the defensive line. He has a lot of flexibility in someone who, especially, I watched highlights this morning of him. If you are deep in your own territory and drop back to pass, it's like a button goes off, an alarm in his head, and he's like, oh, I'm really going to hit you hard now. Oh, you were mad you're at the 13-yard line? Well, now you're at the 4. That's Ashton Gelati right there. He loves that and will be a big reason if Louisville contends again this year that they do. That's going to do it for our defensive line. Tomorrow, offensive line, the most important position of all the positions in the universe, because I used to play offensive line, or couldn't you tell? This is 365 Sports in the Top 5. We're wrapping it up right now.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. Again, sponsored by TexasBeefHouse.com. Next week on the 28th and 29th, Wednesday and Thursday, their next live auction. Go to their website, TexasBeefHouse.com. All right, Craig, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Emery Winter, thank you. He's dialing up, editing, doing his magic when it comes to 365 Sports tonight. Tonight, the 4 best segments on the local CW at 10:30. Also, if you haven't already, please click the like, and if you haven't, subscribe button. We would appreciate that. Spread the word. Garrett Ross, glad to have you back. Love the old Redskins cap.
Joe Gibbs special.
The Joe Gibbs special when they won Super Bowls and they were relevant year in and year out. All right, thanks to Jack McKenzie. Paul's back again tomorrow. Thank you for being a part of our show every day. We appreciate you. We never take it for granted. Good night. I'm David Smoak, 365 Sports.